Chapter 298. Early morning, it was another new day. At the entrance of Sanfu Town, Ghost Li and that young man stood face to face. Xiao Hui crouched on his shoulder. The evil Tao Tai followed behind that young man, looking bored. That young man glanced at Ghost Li, smiled, and said, "It's a rare gathering. We bid farewell today. Don't know when we will meet again. Brother, please take care." Ghost Li indifferently said, "You too, right." That young man at this moment seemed to recall something, said, "Now that the world is in chaos and the situation in the north is getting more and more tense, brother does not have the intention to go up north to take a look?" Ghostly was slightly surprised, could not help but glance at that young man. That young man's expression was calm, as if there was no special intention. After a moment of silence, said, "Let's talk about it later." "Why? You're also interested in these fights and killings." That young man smiled but did not answer, only cupped his hands and said, "The world's journey is long. The ways of the world are treacherous. We will meet again if we are fated." Ghostly returned the greeting, said, "Yes." That young man laughed, turned and left. Tao Tai, with a low roar, seemed to be informing the monkey Xiao Hui, and then followed. Xiao Hui, who was crouching on Ghostly's shoulder, seemed reluctant, called out a few times to Tao Tai's back. After a while, that mysterious young man and Tao Tai's figures had already disappeared. Ghostly looked at the direction where their figures disappeared, was silent for a moment, and then slowly turned around. This Sanfu town in front of him was dead silent. Not even a trace of vitality. Xiao Hui clicked its tongue twice, grabbed that wine bag from its back, and drank 2 mouthfuls. Last night in that tavern cellar, this monkey actually found some strong liquor. "Let's go, Xiao Hui," Ghostly suddenly said calmly. Xiao Hui called out twice. The monkey's palm was placed on Ghost Li's hair, fiddling with it. Ghost Li's eyes gazed into the distance. After a long time, quietly said, "That place, after all, is the place where we stayed together. Do you still remember?" The monkey did not reply, not knowing if it understood or not, just that on the entire desolate street, a cold wind seemed to blow past Qingyun Hill, Big Bamboo Valley. Qingyun sect Big Bamboo Valley branch head Tian Bui, right now, was alone in observed silence hall on Big Bamboo Valley with his hands behind his back, pacing back and forth. He was in a very bad mood, and there was a faint look of anger on his face, as well as a hint of irritation. His wife Suru, who had always been considerate, was not at Big Bamboo Valley at the moment. Instead, went to Small Bamboo Valley Shuiwa Master's place. As for the disciples, they had always been very respectful to him. Seeing Tian Bai's bad mood, they had long hidden far away. The only eldest disciple, Xavion, who could barely speak to him, right now was also nowhere to be seen. Tian Bui knew what it was for. The world was facing a calamity. Nobody knew when those terrible demon beasts would attack. As one of the leaders of Qing Yun's sect, naturally he was troubled by this. But it was also because of this, under his wife Suru's repeated persuasion, for his disciple Xavion's happiness, Tian Bui finally made a trip to Small Bamboo Valley 3 days ago for Xavion and 1 min to propose to Shuiwa Master. Unexpectedly, Shuiwa Master seemed to have eaten some gunpowder, exploded at the slightest provocation, did not even give face to Suru, who was at the same time, not to mention 1 min, who was at the side with a distressed expression, directly rejected, and also coldly mocked Tian Bui. What kind of temperament was Tian Bui? How could he not fly into a rage? Immediately quarreled with Shuiwa Master on Small Bamboo Valley. Almost came to blows. In the end, it was Suru who managed to pull him back to Big Bamboo Valley, and Shuiwa Master was also stopped by a group of kneeling disciples. After this incident, Xavion naturally was extremely dejected, hung his head and let out his anger. His face was like a bitter gourd all day. Tian Bui was already in a bad mood. Upon seeing him like this, he became even more furious, continuously scolded him several times, said, "Don't have a wife, then don't have a wife. Concentrate on cultivation. In the future, maybe you will gain fortune from the disaster," and so on. Xavion naturally did not dare to contradict his teacher, but his words were obsequious. The disapproving expression was written on his face. Evidently, he still could not forget 1 min of Small Bamboo Valley. Tian Bui saw this and got even angrier, scolded even more harshly, until the end Xavion was almost like a mouse afraid of cat, hiding here and there, not daring to see his teacher again. This day Suru went out early, specially instructed Tian Bui to go to Small Bamboo Valley to persuade Shuiwa Senior Sister. Tian Bui snorted a few times, coldly mocked Shuiwa a few times. Suru ignored him and went straight away, leaving Tian Bui alone sulking. But before she left, Suru spoke a few words to Tian Bui in private, made Tian Bui understand why was Shuiwa, this woman, so rude and unreasonable that day. Suru actually said it very simply. I heard that the day before we went was the day Lu Sweki returned. Shuiwa Senior Sister summoned Lu Sweki alone and talked for a while. In the end, not only Lu Sweki was heavily punished by Senior Sister, even the other disciples were scolded. Tian Bai's appearance was wooden, but he was definitely not a slow person. After a moment, he understood the reason. Just that after Suru left, every time he thought that he actually sent himself to be humiliated, this anger really could not be swallowed. It was unbearable. Observe Silence Hall, right now, was silent. Only Tian Bai's footsteps were heard. His expression also slowly changed along with his footsteps for some reason. Towards the end, his expression became somewhat strange, as if he thought of something. The matter of Anan rejecting the marriage in front of Tongtian Peak Crystal Hall? He knew. And regarding the rumors about Anan, this most outstanding disciple among the younger generation, Tian Bui had also heard of it. Just that deep in his heart, what he was concerned about was the other person in those rumors. 10 years. He softly sighed, his expression somewhat absent-minded. Sometimes even he himself also felt strange. That little disciple who looked so unremarkable at that time, what exactly was it for? To make him worry for so many years? Tian Bui gave a bitter laugh, shook his head. At this moment he suddenly felt something, frowned, looked out of Observed Silence Hall. From afar only heard the sound of air breaking. Tian Bui pondered for a moment, composed himself, walked out. A white light flashed over Big Bamboo Valley, swift as lightning, shot straight towards Big Bamboo Valley. In a blink it was before him, landed 6 chi away from Tian Bui. The dazzling white light wavered, dispersed. Qing Yun Sek Tong Tian Peak, Xiao Yikai's figure appeared. Xiao Yikai turned, a trace of smile on his face, cupped his hands, and said, "Greetings, Tian teacher, uncle." Tian Bui nodded, said, "And? Why are you here? What's the matter?" Xiao Yikai smiled and nodded, then looked around, felt slightly surprised, said, "Tian teacher, uncle, why is this place so deserted? Where are your other junior brothers? Why don't I see them?" Tian Bui thought, if you can see them, then it would be strange. One by one they are hiding somewhere. But on the surface, he acted as if nothing had happened. Lightly said, "They are all doing their homework, so they did not come out. My place is also not like your Tongtian Peak. Flourishing with people, it is common to not see anyone." Xiao Yikai was startled. He could hear the displeasure in Tian Bai's tone, but he was shrewd, pretended he did not hear it, smiled and said, "Oh, I see. Tian teacher uncle, disciple came today, is under teacher's order to visit teacher uncle. There are a few questions to consult with you." Tian Bui frowned, was taken aback, asked in bewilderment, "Consult with me? Consult what?" Daoxian's senior brother, his knowledge is celestial, his skills are profound. What else is there to ask this good-for-nothing junior brother of mine? Xiao Yikai smiled but did not speak, only looked at Tian Bui. Tian Bui understood, said, "Then let's go in and talk." Then he turned and was about to walk into Observe Silence Hall. Xiao Yikai followed behind him. Suddenly Tian Bai's body paused, abruptly turned his head, looked towards the disciple's house. Xiao Yikai felt strange, also looked over there, but did not see anything, couldn't help but asked, "What is it, Tian teacher uncle?" Tian Bui hesitated, shook his head, said, "Nothing, my eyes are blurred. How can he?" He suddenly coughed, calmly said, "Let's go in and talk." Xiao Yikai was baffled. He couldn't help but look in that direction again, but all he saw were rows of houses neatly arranged and silent. It seemed to be too normal. He did not think much, followed behind Tian Bui into Observe Silence Hall. After the two figures disappeared from Observed Silence Hall, the quiet atmosphere again enveloped Big Bamboo Valley. Not knowing how much time had passed, suddenly a figure flashed in the corridor of the disciples' houses. It was ghostly. He silently gazed towards the direction of observed silence hall, then turned and walked along the once incomparably familiar corridor, unhurriedly walked inside. Probably because it was afternoon, the other disciples were nowhere to be seen. In his memory, what was most frequently heard here, other than little junior sister Tian Linger's clear and melodious laughter, was Du Baishu's slightly dispirited shouts, because he must have lost another bet. Then big senior brother Xavion and the rest's deep and resounding laughter would be heard. The other senior brothers would also join in and laugh, and that youngest and most unremarkable disciple most likely would also be smiling knowingly in the corner. Chapter 299. Once upon a time, the past, in the slowly walking footsteps gently flipped, those old events seemed to be engraved in every brick and tile, between the stone pillars and pavilions, reverberating around him. Ghost Lee's expression from the beginning gradually changed. The once ice-like expression quietly faded. The past was actually so soul-stirring. Even after so many years, he still could not forget. If everything had not changed. He stood in the corridor illuminated by the faint sunlight, slowly sat down on the low railing. Big Bamboo Valley's genial and warm sunlight shone on his face, as if, just like 10 years ago. Footsteps and voices were heard from far behind. Nearer, it was Big Bamboo Valley's fourth disciple, Hidaji, and sixth disciple, Amandla. The two of them walked side by side, and the moment their figures appeared, Ghostly had already disappeared like a ghost. The mountain breeze blew past, the branches and grasses swayed together. Nobody knew where exactly he was hiding. Hidaji and Du Baishu obviously did not notice anything. Both of them spoke softly and slowly walked over. Du Baishu was carrying a wooden bucket, half filled with water. Beside it was a piece of cloth. It looked like he was going there to clean it up. And watching both of them walking forward. Not long after, they reached a room's door. Du Baishu shrugged his shoulders to Hidaji. Hidaji smiled. Both of them walked in together. After a while, Ghost Lee's figure appeared from a corner outside the corridor, his eyes complicated, looking ahead. The room that the two former senior brothers entered was actually the room that he used when he was still Big Bamboo Valley's youngest disciple, Zhang Xiaofan. But that room should have been abandoned for many years. Why did the two senior brothers still want to go in? Ghostly quietly floated over. It was as if he had suddenly fallen into a dream. He stood at the door in a daze. This small courtyard was exactly the same as it was in the past. There was still the gravel path, the green grass, and even the small pine tree was still growing there. It was just that after so many years, it had grown much thicker. Water sounds were heard from the room, following which Amandla and Hidaji's voices were heard. Fourth senior brother, you tell us, after so many years, why does teacher still want us to clean this room? Isn't this deliberately making me suffer? Hidaji laughed and scolded. Brat, you want to be lazy again, don't you? Let me tell you, Master has been angry recently because of eldest brother's matter. Don't provoke him or Master will skin you alive. Du Baishu laughed dryly and said, Senior brother, you are joking with me again. How would I dare to provoke teacher? It's just that junior brother has been gone for more than 10 years. But Master still ordered us to keep this place the same and clean it every day. I really don't know what the old man is thinking in his heart. The figure standing outside the room slowly lowered his head. In the room, Hidaji was silent for a while, but he sighed and said in a low voice, Although Master has never talked about Xiao Fan all these years, but we all know in our hearts that he loves Xiao Fan the most. Du Baishu's voice said, That's right, I can also see that. To be honest, sometimes I also miss little junior brother. But what's the use? Little junior brother has long become another person. Don't tell me he will return to Big Bamboo Valley and become Zhang Xiaofan again. Become our seventh junior brother again? Outside the window, Ghost Lee's expression became more and more indifferent. His body also straightened. Only his two hands, clenched into fists, clenched tighter and tighter. Can you turn back? The steps you took in the time, the path you crossed, many years later, can you still remember to turn back and look into the distance? Still think of turning back? The warm sunlight shone on the body, but it felt like being in an ice house. Hidaji and Du Baishu also became silent, as if this topic was accidentally brought up. Even they felt depressed and speechless. They messed around in the room for a while, carried the water buckets, and walked out. Hidaji gently closed the door, looked at the green grass in the small courtyard, the pine branches swaying. Although it was a scene of spring, but there was a sense of loneliness, as if the owner of the house was not around. Even this piece of spring scenery also lost its color. He shook his head, sighed, and left with Du Baishu. After a long time, ghostly, from behind that pine tree, slowly walked out. The familiar mountain breeze blew on his face, ruffled his hair. He walked to the door, raised his right hand, and placed it on the door. His movements were very, very slow, as if there was 1,000 caddies of pressure on his hand. Even the expression on his face seemed as if he could not breathe. But that strange, inexplicable feeling, like an invisible force, finally pushed open this door. It was as if he had opened a window of the past and was able to see the past. The familiar bed, the familiar table and chairs, and the Tao word hanging on the wall. After many years, it looked slightly withered and yellow. Even the teapot and teacups on the table looked exactly the same as that year. Who knew this simple and crude room? How many times had it appeared in his dreams? Even the air here seemed to have a faint feeling of the past. He slowly walked into the room, walked to the bed, slowly sat down, used his hand to gently caress the bedding. A gentle feeling passed through his palm. Who saw? He suddenly bit his lips, so hard, so deeply. In observed silence hall, Tian Bui and Xiao Ikai sat together. Tian Bui seemed to be uneasy. Facing Xiao Ikai, his eyes were looking elsewhere, as if thinking about something. Until Xiao Ikai coughed once, called out, "Tian teacher uncle." Tian Bui then seemed to wake up, nodded his head, said in, "All right, you say it. What does Daoxian's Sec head senior brother have for you, this proud disciple, to specially make a trip?" Xiao Ikai smiled and said, "You flatter me. It is like this. Teacher mainly has two matters. Wants disciple to ask Tian teacher uncle." Tian Bui said, "Oh, go ahead." Xiao Ikai said, "One is that recently the number of good faction friends coming to Qinyan Hill is still increasing. Other branches have already received quite a number of people. Big Bamboo Peak also arranged for hundreds of friends to stay in houses on the hillside. But even so, the accommodation is still not enough. Therefore, teacher wants disciple to plead teacher uncle. Is it possible to arrange more good faction friends in Big Bamboo Peak?" Tian Bui raised his brows, glanced at Xiao Ikai. Xiao Ikai looked a little embarrassed but still smiled and said, "Teacher uncle, this is also because of the world calamity. We have no choice, and our Qinyan Sec has always regarded ourselves as the leader of the good faction. We can't just push the friends out the door, right?" Tian Bui snorted, said, "Don't think I'm an idiot. Those so-called good faction friends, when they really fought with those demon beasts, only less than 30% of them could contribute. More than half of them saw our Qinyan reputation, ran over to seek refuge." Xiao Ikai laughed bitterly, said, "Tian teacher uncle is too serious. But even so, we can't just push them out the door. If we really do so, how would the world's good faction see us Qinyan? For the sake of the big picture, Tian teacher uncle, please help more." Tian Bui rolled his eyes, suddenly seemed to think of something. His eyes suddenly lit up, a sneer on his lips, coughed once. His face revealed a righteous expression, said, "Since Daoxian's senior brother has said so, I also can't refuse. Anyway, it is also for the sake of the world's good faction and the big picture. Then let's do it like this." Xiao Ikai was overjoyed, cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, teacher uncle." Tian Bui smiled, suddenly raised his hand and said, "Wait, I have not finished." Xiao Ikai was startled, said, "What?" "Tian teacher uncle, please speak." Tian Bui smiled and said, "Since the calamity is before us, everything must be for the big picture. I heard in our Qinyan 7 branches, there is another branch, seems to be the branch with more female disciples." Xiao Ikai was still smiling. Halfway through, his face stiffened, gradually unable to smile. Tian Bui was still smiling to himself, said, "I remember in that branch, the terrain is vast, and I have been there a few days ago. The empty houses are really innumerable. How come sect head senior brother is so wise? Actually did not think of this place. Xiao Yikai smiled bitterly. After a long while said, Tian teacher uncle, this. Tian Bui snorted. His chubby face looked up at the sky, did not say a word. Xiao Yikai looked at him like this, secretly shook his head, could only say, yes, after disciple returns today, I will report to teacher, ask him to make the decision. Tian Bui also did not speak. The expression on his face also did not change, only nodded. But in his heart he was very happy, snickering incessantly. Xiao Yikai calmed his mind, and then said, then Tian teacher uncle, there is still this second matter. It is even more important than the matter just now. Benevolent teacher also repeatedly reminded, please teacher uncle must think carefully before answering. Tian Bui saw Xiao Yikai's serious face, very different from before. Clearly this matter was not a small matter, could not help but was startled, nodded and said, oh, what matter is so serious? Say it. Chapter 300. Xiao Yikai lowered his voice. His expression turned solemn, said, teacher asked me to ask teacher uncle, the Tianji seal at the back of Bamboo Valley, is it still in good condition? Tian Bai's expression changed greatly, abruptly stood up, stared at Xiao Yikai. Xiao Yikai also slowly stood up but took a step back. Tian Bui stared at Xiao Yikai for a long time. The expression on his face kept changing. At first he was shocked, slowly calmed down, and became deep in thought. Finally his eyes seemed to flash another strange light. Looked at Xiao Yikai, suddenly said, seems Daoxian senior brother really wants to pass his sect head position to you. Xiao Yikai lowered his head slightly, said, teacher uncle is too serious. Disciple dare not accept it. Tian Bui indifferently said, he even did not hide this matter from you. The meaning is naturally very clear. Forget it. This is your Tongtian Peaks matter. I also can't be bothered. But regarding the Tianji seal, his voice paused here, in a deep voice said, this matter is not trivial, and even more concerns Qing Yun's fate. Qing Yi founder had issued a clear order to Qing Yun's 7 branches heads. Unless it is absolutely necessary, do not use it. He breathed deeply, said, the implications everyone understands very well. I just want to ask, has Daoxian's senior brother really thought it through? Xiao Yikai's expression was also extremely cautious. After a long silence, as if not daring say a word wrong, then nodded and said, yes, teacher before disciple left, has already very solemnly instructed disciple. Tian Bui pondered for a moment, said, then other than Tongtian Peak and Bamboo Valley, the other 5 branches, Tianji seal? Xiao Yikai respectfully said, teacher only informed disciple about this matter, because teacher feels that Tian teacher uncle is the most respected in Qing Yun's sect, so specially came to seek teacher uncle's opinion. As for the other 5 branches, disciple will pay a visit to the heads later. Tian Bui slowly nodded, again sat back on his seat, thought for a long time, sighed and said, to talk about the current situation, it is indeed already at a critical juncture. The fate of the common people all depends on this battle. Sect head senior brother wants to go all out. I also have nothing to say. Just that after you go back, help me pass on a message to him. Xiao Yikai said respectfully, yes, Tian Shu, please tell me. I will definitely bring it to you. Tian Bai's face turned slightly pale, said, once the 7 Meridians Heaven Fate Seal is removed, Qing Yun Hill's 1,000 years of repressed evil energy will inevitably leak out. Although with the suppression of Zhu Xian Ancient Sword Divine Power, it can turn into exceptional murderous intent, but the harm to the sword wielder, the erosion of the foundation of cultivation, is also no small matter. Daoxian's senior brother's skills are profound, but this is not a small matter. It's better to ask him to think about it first, just in case. Xiao Yikai said with a straight face, yes, disciple will definitely bring Martial Uncle Tian's words. After a pause, he continued, if Martial Uncle Tian doesn't have anything else, I'll take my leave first. Tian Belize nodded and did not speak. Xiao Yikai saw his solemn expression and did not dare say more and slowly retreated. In observed silence hall, Only Tian Bui was left. He slowly turned around, looked at the statues of Taoism three Qing founders worshipped in observed silence hall. His expression complicated. After a long while, he only sighed and did not say anything. When Xiao Yikai flew back to Tongtian Peak, it was already nighttime. Tongtian Peak was brightly lit. The original Qing Yun sect disciples, in addition to the numerous good faction people that flooded into Qing Yun recently, made this fairyland-like place somewhat crowded and secular. But Xiao Yikai did not have a mood to care about all these. He headed straight to Crystal Hall. After inquiring about Reverend Daoxian's whereabouts from the Qing Yun disciples in Crystal Hall, he headed towards Reverend Daoxian's bedroom at the rear hall of Crystal Hall. Coming to a secluded place at the rear hall, Xiao Yikai stood at Reverend Daoxian's door for a while, composed himself, and was about to knock. Reverend Daoxian's voice was heard from inside the room. "Is it Yikai? Come in." Xiao Yikai paused for a moment, immediately respectfully said, "Yes." After speaking, he gently pushed open the door and walked in. The room was very spacious. All the furnishings had a bookish aura. Other than a simple table, chairs, and bed, there were even more books on the bookshelves on both sides of the room, many of which were already ancient books. Neatly placed on the bookshelves, could be seen that the owner had read through them countless times. Reverend Daoxian was sitting beside the desk, holding an ancient scroll in his hand, reading. Seeing Xiao Yikai walking in, he smiled and said, "Only return now?" Xiao Yikai bowed deeply, said, "Yes, teacher." Reverend Daoxian nodded, said, "How's the matter going?" Xiao Yikai said, "The 7 branches leaders all have no objections, all said to follow teacher's wishes. Only Big Bamboo Valley Tian teacher uncle." Reverend Daoxian frowned, said, "Why?" "Tian junior brother, he has a different opinion." Xiao Yikai quickly said, "No, Tian teacher uncle also did not object, only asked disciple to bring a few words to report to teacher." Reverend Daoxian was slightly surprised, said, "What words, say?" Xiao Yikai immediately repeated Tian Bai's words. Reverend Daoxian was speechless. Xiao Yikai, who was standing at the side, peeked. Reverend Daoxian's expression was complicated, seemed to be thinking about something, his expression constantly changing. Just when Xiao Yikai was guessing what Reverend Daoxian was thinking, Reverend Daoxian suddenly said, "Eat Sai, what do you think of Tian teacher uncle?" Xiao Yikai was shocked, did not know what Reverend Daoxian's words meant, glanced at him but could not see anything special, could only carefully said, "And disciple feels Tian teacher uncle this person is still quite good." Reverend Daoxian smiled, obviously did not care much about this disciple's opportunistic words. He leisurely said, "Yes, he's quite a good person. It must have been hard for him to look like that at that time, to be able to be seen through by someone's perceptive eyes." Reverend Daoxian's words suddenly stopped. The room fell into silence. Xiao Yikai gently shifted his body, indistinctly felt uneasy. After a moment, Reverend Daoxian said, "You have been running for a day. You must be tired. Go back and rest." Xiao Yikai nodded, bowed, and said, "Yes." After speaking, he slowly retreated. Reverend Daoxian looked at this proud disciple's figure disappearing from his sight, pondered for a moment, and looked at the pitch-black sky outside the window, slowly stood up, walked out. Very quickly, his figure melted into Qing Yun's sect's dark night. Although it was already late at night, but in the secluded founder's ancestral hall at the back of Tongtian Peak, the everlasting lantern was still burning, like a faint nether fire in the darkness. The old man who was guarding this founder's ancestral hall was still awake. Right now, he was standing in front of the altar that enshrined Qing Yun's sect ancestors' spirit tablets, staring at those names in the darkness. Far away, there were low sounds of insects. In the silence, there seemed to be some heartbeat sounds. The night breeze blew past. The flame of the everlasting lantern swayed. As if it was panting, the old man slowly turned around, walked to the lantern, used his hand to gently block the direction where the wind was blowing from. Very soon, the lantern quieted down and again started to burn steadily. The old man stared intently at this spot of light. The lantern reflected in his eyes, seemed to be burning something too. In the deep night, footsteps were suddenly heard. The old man frowned, Listen carefully and then slowly turn around, the old voice unhurriedly said. I didn't expect at such a late time you would still come. Reverend Daoxian's figure slowly became clear from the darkness, walked into this founder's ancestral hall. Under the dim yellow lantern light, the two old men's gazes met in midair. For a moment they were both stunned. Inadvertently, they suddenly realized the other party was already so old, and then they recalled, weren't they the same? Reverend Daoxian was silent, stared at that old man for a long time, and then slowly walked to the altar table, stood under the Qing Yun sect ancestors' spirit tablets, slowly straightened his body. The old man walked behind him, also did not speak. In the darkness, an invisible majestic presence slowly emanated from those shadows, like deep traces that even time could not erase away. Reverend Daoxian was expressionless, picked up 3 thin incense sticks from the altar table, walked to the candles and lit them. Both hands solemnly held them, respectfully bowed 3 times to the ancestors' tablets, and then stepped forward, inserted the incense sticks into the incense burner. Faint light smoke rose from the incense burner and dispersed into the air, making the memorial tablets in front of them even more indistinct. Indistinctly, there seemed to be pairs of eyes, coldly looking at the 2 old men and the world. Burning incense in the middle of the night? Is there any difficulty? That old man indifferently asked, his tone calm, as if he was talking about something that had nothing to do with him. Reverend Daoxian did not turn back to look at him. His pair of eyes was always staring at those majestic tablets behind the smoke. After a moment, he unhurriedly said, You say, in the future after you and I have passed on, when the descendants pay their respects to us, what kind of feelings would they have? That old man snorted, said, To you, naturally they would be filled with reverence. As for me, don't tell me who would still remember. Reverend Daoxian did not mind the old man's slightly sarcastic words, only smiled faintly. Then he quietly said, Now that the calamity is upon us, the people in the world are plunged into misery and suffering the ravages of the evil beasts. As long as I think of the inevitable battle between Qingyun Hill and the evil beasts, and even more related to the fate of the people in the world, these heavy burdens on my shoulders, I have not slept well for many days. Chapter 301. That old man frowned, said, Don't tell me you are here to complain to me. This is not your character. Reverend Daoxian looked at that old man for a moment, suddenly laughed out, and then sighed and said, You and I have been friends for these few hundred years. As expected, only you know me best. That old man shook his head and said, I know you best? If it is really so, I will not be here guarding the ancestral hall. All right, less nonsense. What exactly do you want to say? Reverend Daoxian seemed to be especially lenient towards the old man. He contradicted him several times, but Daoxian did not take it to heart. Only his face looked solemn, slowly said, I have already made up my mind. This battle concerns too much for the world's common people's livelihood. I want to remove Qing Yun Hill 7 Peaks Heaven Seal. That old man's expression suddenly froze, frowned deeply, looked deeply at Daoxian. Daoxian looked back calmly. After a long time, that old man slowly said, This matter, have you thought it through? Daoxian slowly nodded, said, But today when I secretly informed the 6 leaders, Tian Bui asked someone to pass on some words to me, advised me to be careful of the evil energy backlash. That old man coldly laughed, turned and faced those ancestors' memorial tablets, after a long time said, It's not like you have never entered the illusory moon cave. What is inside? You yourself know. After a pause, his voice suddenly softened, with a trace of helplessness, said, You better take care of yourself. Reverend Daoxian was silent. After a moment, he also raised his head, looked at that deep dark shadow, that silent majesty, seemed to be silently sneering in the darkness. 7 days later, around Qing Yun Hill, rumors of demon beasts appearing increased. Within 100 miles, with Heong City at the foot of the mountain as the center, people could be seen fleeing everywhere. As if right now, in this world, only that lofty towering Qing Yun Hill could give people a little comfort and sense of safety. And amidst the noise of the countless people, Hyang City was the most chaotic place. The streets and alleys were packed with people. The original inns and restaurants in the city were already full of people, and even more refugees had to sleep in the open. Under these circumstances, the food supply in River Sun City became very tight. Fortunately, because the city was right by the river, there was no need to worry about the water supply. Originally, in this kind of chaotic situation, it was hard to guarantee that there would not be any robberies, murders, and other evils. On the matter, there were indeed such rumors from time to time. Yesterday, someone disappeared, and today, someone's corpse was heard lying on the streets. But Hyang City was after all at the foot of Qingyun Hill. Qingyun's sect had long made preparations and sent quite a number of disciples to maintain order in the city. Therefore, in general, these numerous refugees in this calamity did not meet with any mishap. Just that, with that terrifying demon beast rumor spreading day by day, who could predict what tomorrow would be like? In this situation, the atmosphere in Hyang City was getting more and more uneasy. People were panicking. And in such a situation, Jianghu fortune teller Zhou Yixian, with his granddaughter Xiao Huan and wild dog Taoist, came to this city. Standing on the previously spacious street, right now densely packed heads could be seen. The main street was so crowded that it was difficult to walk. Wild dog Taoist was still all right, but Zhou Yixian and Xiao Huan were dumbstruck. Relying on wild dog Taoist's strong physique and ferocious face, opening the way in front, the weaker ones were pushed aside, the stronger ones turned and looked at wild dog Taoist. With that face, most of them did not dare to say anything. Zhou Yixian and Xiao Huan followed closely behind wild dog Taoist, struggled to move forward, sweating profusely along the way. With great difficulty they passed through the main street, turned into a small alley at the west of Hyang City. The three of them walked in the usually secluded alley. Right now there were many people standing, but compared to the crowded main street outside, this place could really be said to be spacious. Tannis Ka cursed in a low voice, appearing very angry. It's fine if I, an old man, run for my life, but why are there so many people running with me? In the end, I, an old man, feel so uncomfortable while running for my life. This small alley was very long, twisting and turning. The further in they walked, the lesser the number of people. After about an hour, the three of them reached the end of the alley. There were no more refugees. The reason was very simple. This place was a morgue, but looking at the dilapidated entrance of this small morgue, even half of the wooden door had fallen to the ground. The other half was nowhere to be seen. Not sure if it was taken by someone to be used as firewood. Zhou Yixian looked at this morgue, shook his head, sighed. Xiao Huan stood beside him, quietly called out, said, "Grandpa." Wild Dog did not understand, but he was from evil sect. He did not really care about these morgues with bad luck, only puzzled. Why would Zhou Yixian and Xiao Huan come to this place? Zhou Yixian was silent for a while, said, "Let's go in. No matter what, this place should be quieter." After speaking, he took the lead and walked in. Xiao Huan and Wild Dog followed behind him. Walking into the morgue, in the small courtyard, the grass and trees were desolate. Scattered wooden shavings and broken beams could be seen everywhere. Indistinctly, there seemed to be some white things shining in the grass. Xiao Huan's face was slightly pale, couldn't help but pull Zhou Yixian's clothes. Zhou Yixian turned back and looked at her, quietly comforted. "It's not the first time here. What are you afraid of? And this is also your father's place. Will he harm us?" Xiao Huan nodded. Her face then became better. Wild Dog Taoist frowned behind, but did not say anything. In front of the courtyard was the morgue's gatehouse. Zhou Yixian walked up, saw the door was covered with dust. Not sure how long had it been since someone came here. He was speechless, shook his head, sighed again, and pushed the door open. Creak! The wooden door made an ear-piercing sound, slowly retreated in. A moldy smell gushed out in the dim light. 3 coffins were placed disorderly, but the coffin lids were already scattered at the side. An unspeakable desolation of the years, as if in this small house, faintly emanated out. Tannis Ka's mouth twitched twice. His face pale, slowly walked up, did not look at the scattered coffins, went straight to the sacrificial table where incense sticks were placed, looked at the dozens of spirit tablets on the table that were lying all over the place. The room was silent, as if no one dared to speak. Zhou Yixian slowly stretched out his hand, picked up those spirit tablets, slowly wiped off the thick layer of dust on them, glanced at them, put them aside, and then went to find the next one. Just like this, when he was cleaning the seventh spirit tablet, he saw the words "Beloved Son, Zhou Xingyun's spirit tablet" written on the tablet. Tannis Ka stopped, silently looked at the spirit board. After staring for a long time, Tani slowly walked up, looked at the spirit board in his hand. Her eyes were also a little moist, quietly said, "Grandpa, put father's spirit board properly." Zhou Yixian heaved a long sigh, his face somewhat desolate, nodded. Tani took the tablet from his hand, carefully placed it on a sacrificial table, then stepped back, put her palms together, respectfully bowed to the tablet, quietly said, "Father, me and Grandpa have come back to see you again. These years, thanks to you, although Grandpa and I have roamed the world, but everything is fine. Today we have come back to clean up for you. Hope you do not blame us." After saying that, he respectfully bowed 3 times. Wild Dog Taoist was watching from behind, suddenly walked to the front, bowed thrice to the tablet, startled Zhou Yixian and Tani. Tani said in surprise, "Priest, why are you—" Wild Dog Taoist did not look at Zhou Yixian's strange eyes, said, "Since he is your father, also my senior, coming to this place, I have to pay my respects to senior. It is only right." Tani then felt relieved, nodded and said, "Then thank you very much." After speaking, she turned and spoke to the tablet. "Father, this is Wild Dog Taoist. He is a good person, helped me and Grandpa a lot." Zhou Yixian snorted, said, "He is considered a good person, humph humph, harboring evil intentions." Wild Dog Taoist's expression froze, but Tani had already glared at Zhou Yixian, said, "Grandpa, how can you talk nonsense?" Zhou Yixian rolled his eyes, turned and looked elsewhere. Wild Dog Taoist gratefully looked at Tani, was about to speak. Suddenly his body stopped, abruptly turned around. Tani and Zhou Yixian also seemed to feel something. Almost at the same time, looked towards the entrance of the morgue. In the originally desolate and silent morgue, at that door, a black-attired person suddenly appeared. Even his face was covered by a black veil, unspeakably strange. The morgue, which was initially livelier because of the arrival of Zhou Yixian and the rest, right now, because of this person's appearance, suddenly fell into an even deeper, deathly silence and desolation. Wild Dog Taoist's countenance changed greatly. His lips moved a few times, then slowly said with a hoarse voice, "Mr. Ghost." Chapter 302. The black-attired man standing at the door was Ghost King Sek's mysterious figure. Mr. Ghost, Wild Dog Taoist, had stayed in Ghost King Sek for a period of time after being subdued by Ghostly, and therefore had seen him a few times. Although he knew little about what kind of person Mr. Ghost was, but he knew this person's identity was not to be trifled with and was definitely not someone he could compare to. To suddenly meet this person at this place, how could Wild Dog Taoist not be shocked? Tannis Ka and Xiao Huan did not know who this mysterious black-attired man was, but looking at Wild Dog Taoist's faintly fearful expression, guessed that this person was not a good person, couldn't help but also became nervous. And Mr. Ghost floated over, seemed to not expect that there would be people in this secluded and unlucky place, and, among them, someone could recognize him. His body couldn't help but trembled. After a moment, he saw the 3 people in the house clearly, especially Wild Dog Taoist. Mr. Ghost immediately calmed down. His eyes assessed Wild Dog Taoist for a while, and then looked at Tannis Ka and Xiao Huan, and finally back to Wild Dog, his voice calm, said, "You are Wild Dog Taoist, right?" Wild Dog Taoist had seen this Mr. Ghost several times before. It was always when he followed behind Ghostly and Ghost King Sect, saw that mysterious black figure from afar. Seeing Mr. Ghost face to face, today was the first time. Unexpectedly, this Mr. Ghost spoke. He actually recognized him, couldn't help but was shocked, paused for a moment, and said, "Yes." Mr. Ghost indifferently said, "Haven't you always been following Ghostly? Why did you suddenly come to this place? And also, who are these 2 people?" Wild Dog Taoist wanted to ask him, on what basis you can come and I can't, but when the words were at the tip of his tongue, he did not dare to speak and only quietly said, I have separated from Ghostly and will look for him soon. Both of them are my friends." Mr. Ghost's tone was calm, as if he did not mind that Wild Dog Taoist intentionally or unintentionally emphasized Ghostly 2 words, said, "Oh, I know, but you still did not say. Why are you here?" Wild Dog Taoist was speechless, did not know what to say. Instead, Taniska, who was looking at this Mr. Ghost for a long time, spoke. "It is I have a relative's memorial tablet here. We are here to pay our respects." Mr. Ghost's eyes focused, and then looked behind the three of them. There was indeed a worn-out tablet erected on the sacrificial table. On it a few words were written. "Beloved son Zhou Xingyun's memorial tablet." Mr. Ghost nodded and then seemed to be silent for a moment. The eyes behind the black veil glinting, slowly said, "Since all of you have already paid your respects, this place is after all still a ghost house. It is not advisable to stay for long. Better quickly leave." Wild Dog Taoist turned and looked at Taniska and Xiao Huan. With his original intention, he was definitely not willing to stay with such a ghostly person, and looking at Mr. Ghost's words, if not for ghostly, most likely he would not make the three of them stay. But even so, Wild Dog Taoist was not sure if Zhou Yixian would understand that this person was not someone to be trifled with. And for what he saw, Zhou Yixian had deep feelings for his son who died young. Right now, suddenly being chased away without any trace of politeness, he really did not know if, with his usual temperament, would he break out in curses. As expected, when Wild Dog Taoist looked back, his heart immediately sank. Tanis Yixian did not say anything. His face was taut, as if he was thinking about something, his eyes also strangely wandering. Xiao Huan's pretty face instead had a rare look of anger. Clearly she was very angry with this black-attired man's words. Her mouth opened and looked like she was about to retort. Wild Dog Taoist panicked. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead, secretly cursing in his heart. Just when he was panicking, suddenly Taniska stepped forward, stood in front of Xiao Huan, and blocked her. Xiao Huan's words were about to come out of her mouth, but she was shocked, changed back. "You this? Grandfather, what are you doing?" Taniska glanced at Mr. Ghost, who was standing at the door like a ghost, indifferently said, "Nothing. This time we're only here to see your father. Since we have already paid our respects, we better leave. Anyway, there is nothing much to do here." Xiao Huan was stunned. For a moment could not speak. Wild Dog Taoist instead heaved a long sigh. His heart, which had jumped to his throat, then calmed down, quickly stepped forward and said, Yes, we better leave quickly." Xiao Huan was an intelligent person. Right now she more or less understood something was not right, immediately did not insist, and nodded. The three of them hastily packed up their luggage. With Wild Dog Taoist leading, walked towards the door. Mr. Ghost quietly opened up a path, drifted into the darkness of this house, looking like a ghost. The three of them quickly walked out of the room. The sun shone down on them again. They had only taken a few steps when they heard the door behind them move on its own despite the absence of wind. It let out a rather frightening woo-woo sound and closed in the air with a bang. When they were far away from the morgue, almost unable to see the house, the three of them then stopped. Wild Dog Taoist and Taniska heaved a sigh of relief at the same time. Xiao Huan glanced at them, frowned, and said, "What are you all doing? Why are you all so afraid?" Taniska ignored her, lowered his head, and pondered for a moment, then raised his head and spoke to Wild Dog Taoist. "I heard you called him something, Mr. Ghost. Who is this person?" Wild Dog Taoist hesitated for a moment, said, "He is the most mysterious person in Ghost King sect. Seems to be an elder of some kind. Usually when he appears, he is with Ghost King. I'm also not sure what kind of person he is, but he is definitely not an ordinary person." Taniska frowned tightly, did not speak. Xiao Huan found it strange. Rarely saw her grandfather pondering so seriously. Couldn't help but ask curiously, "Grandfather, what is it? Do you also feel that this person is very strange?" Taniska slowly nodded, his tone very slow and cautious, said, "This person is indeed not to be underestimated. And just now in a morgue, did you all notice something at the right corner of the room, 3 chi away from the wall?" Xiao Huan and Wild Dog Taoist were stunned, carefully recalled, but it was still Xiao Huan who was more attentive, frowned, and said, "Grandfather, I remember that other than a few coffins lying in disorder, there was nothing else." Taniska coldly snorted, said, "That's right, it is a coffin." Wild Dog Taoist curiously said, "What's so strange about coffins? That is the morgue. Naturally, there will be coffins." Taniska rolled his eyes at him, said, "What do you trash know? The other coffins naturally do not count. But there is one coffin that is different. Not only is it not as thick of dust as the other coffins, and its position is facing north and south. Very neat. The position it is at is the place where the yin energy in this ghost house is the strongest. Speaking till here, Tanis Ka's face became even more solemn, said, "Originally, I also did not think of these. That coffin is also not conspicuous. Just that when Wild Dog first saw that person called Mr. Ghost, my heart moved, secretly observed the geomancy of this ghost house. As expected, I found something. Most likely this person is really a ghost cultivator and wants to use this yin energy to nourish his body." Speaking till here, Tanis Ka's face also showed some puzzlement, slightly lowered his head, muttered to himself in puzzlement. Just that although the evil faction cultivators mostly tread on the strange path of Tao, but this kind of ghost Tao strange art seems to be more proficient in southern border witchcraft. Why would it appear on this person? Wild Dog Taoist suddenly interrupted. That might not be the case. At that time, one Du clan had an old fellow called Blood-Sucking Demon. Other than his famous blood-sucking great skill, didn't he also practice the 5 ghosts controlling spirit formation? Tanis Ka spat, said, "Don't pretend you know what you don't know. That vampire devil, that old trash, learned a few short magic from somewhere, forcefully captured some innocent souls, then used it to scare people. When he really needs to use it, most of it will be broken by others. The southern border's witchcraft is extensive and profound, and they have even more shocking achievements in the ghost Tao. How can that trash compare to them?" Cynical Dialectian was speechless, but after thinking about it, it was just like what Tanis Ka said. When Vampire Devil ambushed Shah Danan when he was still a Jadian disciple, the first time he used 5 ghost spirit control, it was really broken by Shah Danan. Although the scene was strange, and Shah Danan's Esper was also filled with ghost energy, but no matter what, it was because Vampire Devil was useless. Thinking about this, cynical Dialectian couldn't help but despise Vampire Devil a little more. He even forgot how he begged for mercy in Vampire Devil's hands. Chapter 303. Tani frowned tightly at the side, said, "Grandpa, no matter what, Father's memorial tablet is still in the middle of that house. Now that there is such a monster in there, will it not be good?" Tanis Ka slowly shook his head, said, "Your father has passed away for many years. This is not a problem, but that place is after all where your father's memorial tablet is. I only have this one son. I can't just ignore it." Wild Dog Taoist was startled, stared and said, "What did you say?" Tanis Ka snorted, said, "I naturally have to go back and take a look. I can't just leave like that." Wild Dog Taoist's face turned pale, angrily said, "That person is not someone you and I can afford to offend, you know?" Tanis Ka spat, ignored him, continued, "Originally, according to common sense, this kind of ghost cultivator, the yin energy is the strongest at night. It is also the best time for him to cultivate and recuperate. If we were to investigate, it would also be better during the day. Just that today we bumped into him. We can't just go back so early. We better wait until night before going." Tani nodded, said, "All right." Then she seemed to think of something, turned and spoke to Wild Dog Taoist. "Priest, why don't you not go with us? Me and Grandpa are also, because Father's memorial tablet is there. We really can't feel at ease, so we want to go back." Wild Dog Taoist was stared at by Tani's bright eyes. Looked like he was going to say something, but suddenly closed his mouth. After a long while he mumbled, "Let's go together." Tani was surprised but still smiled, said, "Really, hee, priest, you are really a good person." Wild Dog Taoist was silent. Beside him Tanis Ka instead sneered twice, his tone rather meaningful. The 3 of them waited in this secluded alley. In the distance, they could still vaguely see a few figures, but as the sky gradually darkened, even those figures gradually disappeared. Most likely it was because this was the morgue of the dead. When night finally fell, the bustling Hyang city, the people who were shrouded in fear of the demon beast catastrophe, finally endured another day. The weary people in every corner of the city with fear and uncertainty about the future quietly fell asleep. Who would have the time to care about the things around them? There was no moon in the night sky, dark clouds heavy, Hyang city appeared dusky. Only in the distant horizon, 1 or 2 faint stars, facing each other, emitting a faint light. The night wind blew gently, bringing with it a trace of chill and coldness. It emitted a soft whooshing sound as it quietly blew over the top of the city. Tanis Ka and the rest quietly came to the morgue entrance at the end of the alley. In the dim light, they could still vaguely make out the dilapidated door and walls. The cold wind whistled, as if there was wind blowing continuously from inside. Tanis Isian shrunk his neck, seemed to feel a chill. Wild Dog Taoist, who was standing behind him, also felt goosebumps, but he quietly glanced to his side, saw Xiaohuan's beautiful figure standing beside him. Her face also had a nervous expression, staring at that darkness. Wild Dog Taoist's intention to retreat also disappeared without a trace. Tanis Ka looked at the darkness for a long time, seemed to be thinking about something. After a long time he turned around, took out a few yellow talismans from his bosom. On them were indistinctly drawn crooked and obscure drawings. In the darkness, one could not see clearly what it was. Tanis Isian passed two to Tani, hesitated for a moment, also passed two to Wild Dog Taoist, quietly said, "These two talismans, the big one you keep close to your body. It can ward off ghost energy invading your body. Hold the small one in your hand. If anything goes wrong, immediately chant incantation. You can escape underground." After speaking, Tanis Ka softly recited the incantation to the two of them. Tani most likely already knew this incantation, nodded her head, looked relaxed, but Wild Dog Taoist felt his head swelling. Tanis Ka's strange incantation was something he had never heard before. Not only the pronunciation was hard to pronounce, it was also full of twists and turns, extremely difficult to remember. Wild Dog Taoist almost suspected if something really happened, before he could finish reciting the incantation, he would already be dead in Mr. Ghost's hands. But no matter what, although he did not know if Tanis Ka, this Jianghu swindler's spell this time, would be effective or not, Wild Dog Taoist, after all, still diligently memorized it. After the time to drink a cup of tea, he finally managed to remember this extremely hard-to-pronounce incantation. Zhou Isian listened to Wild Dog Taoist repeat, nodded his head, indicating that it was enough. This time, when he taught Wild Dog Taoist how to escape, he surprisingly did not lose his temper or scold. Not sure if it was because he knew that these incantations were too difficult to remember. Tanis Ka composed himself, pointed to the morgue entrance. Tani and Wild Dog Taoist nodded at the same time. Tanis Ka inhaled deeply and then slowly lifted his feet and walked forward. Tani and Wild Dog Taoist followed behind him. The night ahead was deep, a stretch of darkness. It was really unspeakably strange. At this tense moment, suddenly far behind the three of them, a few faint calls were heard. Frowny face Gigi. Gigi. The sound was similar to the usual insects. Tanis Ka and Wild Dog Taoist did not pay attention to it, but Tani's body suddenly shook, abruptly turned around and looked behind. She turned so abruptly, the two men beside her were startled, thought there was an accident behind them, quickly turned around to check, but found it was empty behind them. There was nothing at all. Tanis Ka asked in surprise, "Tani, what is it?" Tani's expression fluctuated, her expression also a little strange. Hesitated for a moment, said, "Grandpa, I seem to hear Xiao Hui calling." Tanis Ka frowned, said, "Xiao Hui? What's Xiao Hui?" His voice suddenly stopped, quietly said, "You mean that monkey beside Ghostly?" Tani nodded, but her face looked puzzled, slowly said, "But now there is no sound again. Did I hear wrongly?" Tanis Ka and Wild Dog looked towards the alley at the same time, only saw darkness, where was Ghostly and Xiao Hui. Tanis Ka glared at Tani. Tani blushed, turned around, but for some reason, her expression seemed to be in a trance, not knowing what she was thinking about. Wild Dog Taoist watched from the side. An inexplicable, strange expression flashed past his dog face. He slowly lowered his head. Tanis Ka said, "All right, don't think too much. Let's go in." Tani and Wild Dog Taoist nodded in agreement. Tanis Ka and the rest of them tiptoed to the dilapidated door. In that small courtyard in the darkness, the plants were desolate, dilapidated. Everywhere was pitch black. Nothing was there, but it seemed that behind every shadow, there was a pair of cold eyes looking at them. A cold gust of wind blew past. It was truly eerie, causing one's hair to stand on end. Tanis Ka swallowed his saliva, tiptoed in. The three of them stepped on the grass and trees in the courtyard. In this silence, even though they were extremely careful, they still emitted extremely soft footstep sounds. In their own ears, it seemed to be countless times louder than usual. As the three of them neared that house, their heartbeats uncontrollably sped up. Tani even felt that her heartbeat was so loud, as if she was afraid that others would hear it. It was also at this moment that the originally pitch-black tomb suddenly rang out. Although it was soft, it sounded like a clap of thunder in everyone's ears. A flame suddenly lit up in the room, and the color of the flame was surprisingly a strange dark green. Chapter 304. Tanis Ka and the rest were shocked. In this eerie night, they felt a piercing light behind their backs. Their hairs also stood up. Inside the house, a small dot of dark green fire was quietly burning, slowly emitting light from the cracks of the house. It was indescribably strange and unpredictable. Even the sound of the night wind in the surroundings sounded more and more like the sound of ghosts crying. Just that when the three of them were shocked and thought that they had been discovered by the person in the house, that the faint green fire after lighting up did not have any further reaction. The three of them did not even dare to breathe loudly outside the house. After a long time, after confirming that the dot of faint green fire did not light up because of them, they then secretly heaved a sigh of relief. But following that, curiosity arose in their hearts of fear. Tanis Ka frowned tightly, pondered for a moment, gestured to Xiao Huan and Wild Dog Taoist, and then quietly moved forward, came to the side of the house. This morgue had been dilapidated for many years. It was already dilapidated. He easily found a crack and leaned in, carefully peered into the house. Xiao Huan and Wild Dog Taoist also came over, crouched down beside him. Each found a crack and quietly peeked in. In the dark house, right now emitted a dark green light. Just that dot of fire was not an oil lamp flame. It was a small ball of light, suspended in the air in the house, like a flame quietly burning. And Mr. Ghost was not seen in the house. Just that under the green light, the broken coffins looked especially creepy. Outside the house, Xiao Huan's face was pale, her teeth gently biting her lower lip. Looked up and saw that on the offering table in the day, Tanis Ka's son Zhou Xinyan's memorial tablet was still standing on the table. The other tablets were like in the day. Clearly, although Mr. Ghost was here, he did not have the slightest interest in these tablets. Tanis Ka also heaved a sigh of relief. Seemed like he also saw his son's tablet was safe and sound. He was relieved. Xiao Huan lowered her voice and whispered, "Grandpa, what do we do now?" Zhou Yixian was not a chivalrous person. He took the risk to come here tonight. It was all for his son's memorial tablet. Since he knew that Mr. Ghost was not interested in the tablet and his son was safe and sound, he naturally did not wish to stay any longer. Furthermore, this place was eerie. Naturally, it was not a suitable place for Zhou Great Immortal. It would affect the family cultivation. Having made up his mind, Tanis Ka turned his head and whispered, "Let's go." Xiao Huan and Wild Dog nodded. The three of them were about to turn and leave, but unexpectedly at this moment, Tanis Ka, in his relaxed state, did not pay attention to his footsteps. When he turned, he kicked a stick-like thing on the ground. Immediately it rolled out of the courtyard, making a loud sound. The three of them immediately froze. Xiao Huan angrily said, "Grandpa." Tanis Ka's face was full of embarrassment. Was about to say something to excuse himself. Suddenly a cold snort was heard behind him. Like a bone-chilling cold, the broken wall behind the three of them suddenly collapsed. Darkness and green light instantly gushed out from the house, about to envelop the three of them. Tanis Ka's countenance changed greatly. He abruptly raised his hand, waved out a yellow talisman, urgently said, "Quickly go." After speaking, his lips moved rapidly. A series of strange incantations came out from his mouth. The moment the green light touched his body, the yellow talisman in Tanis Ka's hand was activated by the incantation. A burst of yellow light flashed. Tanis Ka's figure actually disappeared into thin air. Almost at the same time, in the depths of the darkness of the tomb, a voice suddenly exclaimed, "Huh," with a hint of surprise. But although Tanis Ka escaped quickly, the green light arrived in a blink of an eye. Xiao Huan's incantation was only half done, and Wild Dog Taoist, at this crucial moment, the incantation that he forcibly memorized seemed to suddenly disappear from his mind. Dumbfounded, unable to recite a single word, only helplessly waved the yellow talisman in his hand a few times. his mouth opened a few times, looking rather funny. The green light abruptly rushed up, enveloped both of them. In a moment, an extremely cold air pierced into their bodies from all directions. Xiaohuan and Wild Dog Taoist felt their blood seem to freeze in that instant, unable to resist, and right now a great force was produced from the depths of the house. In the faint green light, a sound was heard. Both of their figures were sucked in, unable to resist at all. The next moment, two thuds were heard. Most likely Xiaohuan and Wild Dog Taoist's bodies landed on the floor in the house, but for some reason, they did not make any sound inside and outside the tomb. Suddenly fell into a deathly silence again. The long night, cold and silent. The inside and outside of the tomb was silent. Indistinctly, there was still a thin mist gently drifting past in the darkness, making it hard to see clearly. Only that little nether fire in the house, still silently burning brightly, reminding that there was still a strange existence here. Xiaohuan and Wild Dog Taoist had been sucked into the house for a long time, but after that, there was no sound coming out from the house, and the only one among the three who escaped, Zhou Yixian, had also disappeared. Time passed in this silence, minute by minute, second by second. It was as if the people in this room were especially patient, quietly waiting. In the silence, a figure suddenly appeared at the entrance of the morgue. It was Tanis Ka. His brows tightly frowned, seemed to be hesitating, but eventually still shook his head, sighed, and slowly walked towards the tomb. Walking to the door of the tomb, before he could think, the door of the tomb suddenly, with a squeak, automatically opened. The faint green light inside silently shone on Tanis Ka's body. "Please come in." An emotionless and calm voice rang out in the house. Tanis Ka composed himself, walked in, glanced around, and soon discovered Xiaohuan and Wild Dog Taoist lying on the ground beside the altar table. At a glance, there did not seem to be any wounds on their bodies, but both of them were staring at him with wide eyes. Their mouths moved a few times, but no sound came out. Very strange. Not sure if they were treated with some strange method. And the most eye-catching thing in the house was that netherworld green fire suspended in the air. Right now, it was burning above the coffin that Zhou Yixian noticed during the day, and in the coffin below it, Mr. Ghost's emotionless voice was heard. "Earth escape skill, long lost for many years. Didn't expect to see it again today. I wonder who is sire." Tanis Ka was silent for a moment, watching that coffin. In a deep voice said, "Both of them are young and insensible. Sire is a peerless figure. Don't be calculative with them, this kind of juniors, right?" Mr. Ghost indifferently said, "I dare not. I'm just a lonely wild ghost, not worthy of the title of peerless figure. I've already told you all not to come here during the day, but you all still violated my ban. What is the reason for that?" Tanis Ka's eyes drifted, slowly said, "This is where my deceased son's memorial tablet is, the place where his spirit is reborn. Sire is a ghost cultivator. How can I be at ease?" Mr. Ghost's voice suddenly paused. After a while said word by word, "How does Sire know that I am a ghost cultivator?" Tanis Ka said, "You settled down in the grave, slept in the extreme cave, and also used the netherworld ghost fire to absorb the eerie ghost energy of this century-old morgue, to nourish yourself. This kind of profound ghost way skill. Only those who have immersed in ghost way for a long time can use it." Mr. Ghost was silent for a long time, said, "Sire is indeed a master. Sorry for my disrespect." Tanis Ka's face had a rare, solemn expression, said, "Sire is also an understanding person. Naturally, you know what I am worried about. Although my deceased son has passed away for many years, but this good-for-nothing father, can't let him die in peace. But looking at it today, Sire is not someone who abused the ghost way. I can be at ease." After speaking, Tanis Ka actually bowed to that coffin. Mr. Ghost coldly snorted, his voice icy cold, came out from that coffin, said, "You don't have to flatter me like this. Capturing a person's soul, this kind of despicable thing. I naturally will not do it, but you all have violated my prohibition. You cannot escape punishment." Tanis Ka's countenance changed, coughed dryly, and said, Actually, this is a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding. Sire is a peerless figure. Why must you?" Mr. Ghost snorted, ignored Tanis Ka's delaying tactic, The ghostly green ghost fire suspended in the air suddenly vibrated, instantly brightened. Tanizka's face was bitter, watching that ghost fire. The green light flashed. The ghost fire gradually became bigger. When it became the size of a fist, the entire house was already shrouded by the green light. Even Xiao Huan and Wild Dog Taoist, who were lying on the ground, their faces had already turned green. Suddenly, a slight bang was heard. The green light swayed. That netherworld ghost fire instantly split apart from 1 to 5, divided into 5 directions, followed by several dark red lights silently shot out from the green light, connected with each other, actually forming a strange 5-star formation, revealing layers of eerie, ghostly chi in the air, pouncing over. Chapter 305. Tanizka's face was solemn. His eyes narrowed. His forehead seemed to be perspiration. When the strange formation gradually formed, Tanizka pondered for a moment, retreated 2 steps, took out several yellow talismans from his bosom, pasted 4 of them on his body, and then pasted a few on the ground, chairs beside the stones. It looked messy, but there was an indistinct resonance. Just when Zhou Yixian had just finished setting up the formation, Mr. Ghost's mysterious formation had also formed. In the blink of an eye, the 5-star formation flashed. Instantly, the entire tomb was filled with ghostly wails and wolf howls, extremely ear-piercing. Tanizka's body shook greatly, involuntarily cried out, "Ghost wail break." The ghostly howl seemed formless, but it seemed indestructible. A sharp light broke through the air from the spell formation. Along the way, broken rocks and trees were sent flying, and even the hard stone slabs were left with deep marks. Tanizka's white hair fluttered. Both of his hands swiftly stretched out. 2 yellow talismans were pasted on his ears. Immediately the pain on his face faded slightly, and then he mumbled, his right hand holding the sword, and stabbed the talismans. His eyes suddenly widened, focused on that ghost wail. The next moment, that ghost wail collided with Tanizka's body. Almost at the same time, the 4 talismans on Tanizka's body and the yellow talismans on the ground all lit up, swiftly condensed into a beam of green light in front of Tanizka. Boom! A loud sound. Tanizka's body flew out, crashed heavily into a dilapidated wall behind him, fell down. In the tomb, the yellow talismans fluttered in the air, helplessly drifted away, and the 5 points of fire above Mr. Ghost's coffin once again condensed into one, quietly burning. Tanizka panted heavily, struggled for a while on the ground, slowly climbed up, smiled bitterly, and said, "My old bones, you really won't let it go?" Mr. Ghost was silent for a moment, said, "Your foresight, experience, knowledge are not ordinary people, but why is your cultivation so low?" Tanizka wiped a faint trace of blood from his mouth, indifferently said, "So what if my cultivation is low? There are so many cultivators in the world, so many highly skilled cultivators. How many are happier than me?" Mr. Ghost this time again was silent for a long time. Then he did not speak. That spot of ghost fire suddenly shook, and then swiftly flew toward Xiao Huan and Wild Dog Taoist, stopped above them. Zhou Yixian was shocked. While worrying, the netherworld ghost fire circled around the 2 of them once, and then flew back to Mr. Ghost's coffin. And the next moment, not knowing for what reason, Xiao Huan and Wild Dog Taoist's bodies moved, lightly cried out at the same time, and then climbed up. It seemed like Mr. Ghost had released them from the restraint. Tanizka was surprised and happy, quickly said to the coffin, "Thank you, sir. We will leave now. We will leave now. We will not come again, even if you beat us to death." After speaking, he winked at Xiao Huan and Wild Dog Taoist. Both of them naturally were eager to leave, nodded incessantly, but when they were about to leave, Mr. Ghost's voice suddenly coldly said, "I am letting them go, not to spare you all." The 3 of them were shocked. Tanizka was stunned, said, "What did you say?" Mr. Ghost coldly snorted, said, "The 3 of you came here again and again to investigate my news, even though my ghost ways secret, violated my taboo. Now let the 3 of you deal with me together. I will let you all die without regrets." Xiao Huan and the rest turned pale. Tanizka had just fought with him and knew that this person's skills were unfathomable and could not be defeated. He could only speak humbly. "Sir, as an expert, you should know that we do not have any ill intentions. Just worry that our deceased son's spirit would be disturbed, so." Before he finished, Mr. Ghost suddenly shouted, "Don't say any more. Watch the fire." Before he finished, that speck of netherworld ghost fire in the air had already lit up again. The ghost energy in the tomb once again flourished. Tanis Ka's countenance changed, was about to speak when the ghost fire again turned into a 5-star formation. A sharp whistle. It was the invincible ghost howl break again, charging over. Wild Dog Taoist shouted, dashed to the front to block in front of Xiao Huan, brandished his beast fong magical weapon, blocked in front of him. Tanis Ka quickly shouted, can't block, quickly dodge. But while speaking, that ghost howl break speed was several times faster than before. In a blink it had already reached Wild Dog Taoist. Wild Dog Taoist instantly felt the strong wind cutting his face like knives. Especially his ears were in extreme piercing pain. His entire body seemed to be exposed among thousands of sharp blades. At his mercy. Xiao Huan behind him screamed. Her voice panicked, was about to go up to help, but a strong wind came from Wild Dog Taoist's side. The ghost howl break also abruptly arrived. Xiao Huan had nowhere to retreat, could not avoid in time, looked like she was about to be injured by this demonic skill. And at this critical moment, suddenly a light whistle was heard outside the tomb. An object glimmering with dark green light like lightning flew to Xiao Huan and Wild Dog Taoist. A seemingly ordinary and blunt black stick, gently swung from top to bottom. Suddenly the powerful ghost howl break disappeared. The howling wind in the room also gradually calmed down. Xiao Huan, who had just returned from the gates of hell, abruptly turned her head. An uncontrollable joy on her face called out, "It's you." And almost at the same time, the netherworld ghost fire slowly merged into one. Mr. Ghost also coldly said, "It's you." Someone outside faintly said, "That's right, it's me." Following the voice, a person unhurriedly walked in, his hands clasped behind, a three-eyed gray monkey on his shoulder. It was Ghostly. Ghostly glanced at Xiao Huan and the rest. Xiao Huan's face was smiling, filled with joy looking at him, and Wild Dog Taoist's expression was strange, glanced at him a few times, slowly retreated to his side. Ghostly felt puzzled, but did not think too much, unhurriedly walked to the middle of the house. The soul-devouring stick glimmered with strange light, slowly flew back to his hand. Tanis Ka glanced at Ghostly and then at Xiao Huan, suddenly snorted, said, "Brat, you should have been nearby long ago. Actually, didn't make a move earlier, knowing that I'm old and weak. Still let me face this damn thing. Really harboring evil intentions, you this fellow." Xiao Huan frowned, glared at Tanis Ka, called out, with a tone of reproach, said, "Grandpa." Ghostly did not seem to mind, looked at him, said, "If not so, I still don't know that you are actually related to that Qing Yun Hill old ancestor." Tanis Ka's countenance changed, snorted. Ghostly ignored him, slowly turned, faced that silent coffin. Mr. Ghost's voice slowly sounded, said, "You are not at Majestic Fox Mountain looking after Bai Yao. Why are you here?" Ghostly stared at that coffin, said, "I was just about to ask you. You are not at Wildland Temple. What are you doing here?" Mr. Ghost was silent for a moment, said, "No matter what, you and I are after all Ghost King's sect people. These three have violated my taboo, probing my privacy. I want to get rid of them. Why are you stopping me?" Tanis Ka, who was behind listening, for some reason his voice seemed to have become much louder, loudly said, "Hey, you say kill, and we will kill. Don't tell me you think we are slaughtering pigs." Xiao Huan and Wild Dog Taoist both turned to look at him. Tanis Ka frowned, seemed to feel that something was wrong with him, quietly muttered a few words and quietened down. Ghostly coldly said to the coffin, "You cannot kill them." Mr. Ghost coldly snorted, said, "Why?" Ghostly said, "I am here." Mr. Ghost paused, after a long while coldly said, "Don't tell me you want to stand up for them?" Ghostly expressionlessly said, "Exactly, with me here, you cannot kill them." A trace of joy flashed past Tanis Ka's face. Xiao Huan stared at Ghostly's back, her teeth gently biting her lower lip. Her eyes also seemed especially bright. Only Wild Dog Taoist did not look at Ghostly, instead stared at Xiao Huan for a moment, quietly took a step back. That thought of netherworld ghost fire in the air suddenly started to brighten. The faint green light once again emitted. Tanis Ka and the rest countenances changed, but Ghostly still stood there, motionless, coldly watching that ball of ghost fire. The soul-devouring stick in his hand also gradually started to light up. And right now, The most relaxed one in the entire house seemed to be Xiao Hui on Ghost Li's shoulder. It did not seem to mind the upcoming battle at all. The monkey head looked around, at times looking at the willow, the wisp, and then turning to look at Xiao Huan, making faces at her, at the same time its hands scratched at itself. Chapter 306. Facing Ghostly, although Mr. Ghost still did not appear from the coffin, but clearly he was much more cautious. The dot of netherworld ghost fire silently burned in the air, gradually grew brighter and bigger, reflecting the surrounding faces into green. Ghostly stared at that dot of green light, expressionless, suddenly stepped forward. Almost at the same moment, Ghostly moved. The netherworld ghost fire seemed to be stimulated, suddenly glowed brightly, but this time it did not split into 5 parts to form the 5-star formation. Instead, a ball of green abruptly rose up, bringing along a gust of violent wind, blowing the dust in this house down. Tanizka and the rest were caught off guard, rubbed their eyes. And at this increasingly tense moment, the ghostly atmosphere in the air looked like it was about to launch some mysterious, strange spell. Ghostly did not dare to be careless facing this mysterious Mr. Ghost. Fully alert, suddenly his brows raised, his entire body abruptly leapt up into the air. Almost at the same time, a deafening sound was heard from the depths of this house. The entire house suddenly shook violently, as if the earth was quaking and the mountains were shaking. A huge and deathly pale white bone arm broke through the flagstones on the ground, heavily smashed the place where Ghostly was standing. The green flagstones on the ground were smashed into pieces, debris flying. The entire room was instantly shrouded in ghostly howls. Ghostly flew in the air. That white bone arm seemed to be controlled by some mysterious force. Charged up, straight towards Ghostly. Ghostly frowned tightly but did not look panicked. His eyes reflected the white shadow of that white bone arm. The moment it was about to hit him, his body swayed in the air, drifted to the right, dodged by a hair's breadth. The white bone arm smashed down heavily, landed on the ground. Immediately, another wave of sand and stones flew. Right now the house was filled with ghostly atmosphere. The violent wind was biting cold. Tanizka and the rest were all leaning against the wall. They wanted to leave, but dared not to move carelessly. If not, they might be accidentally injured by the white bones in the chaos. But fortunately, Mr. Ghost's attention seemed to be on Ghostly. The 3 of them hid in the corner beside the offering table. The white bones did not come over to hurt them. Just let the 3 of them in the chaotic sand and stones looked at the house, the originally not very spacious place. Right now, there was an additional huge white bone arm chasing after Ghostly. It seemed to be crowded. But it seemed that this was not enough. Just when Tanizka was muttering in his heart, another muffled shout was heard from deep underground. That voice indistinctly carried some vexation and ferocity, like a ferocious spirit that had been imprisoned for a long time finally had a chance to breathe and let out its pent-up frustrations. The house shook greatly. Earth and stones cracked. The white bones flashed. Another similarly huge white bone arm stretched out from underground, fiercely struck towards Ghostly. Ghostly's figure swayed and dodged between the 2 arms. His eyes stared intently, but until now, he had not fought back. In the house, the next moment it became even more crowded. Ghastly white bones, dancing chaotically in the air. The unfathomable and terrifying scene was quietly staged in this mortuary. Even though Mr. Ghost and Ghostly were fighting intensely, but both of them seemed to have a tacit understanding. The area of their powers were limited to this mortuary. Mr. Ghost's Ghostway powers did not spill outside the house, and Ghostly had always been moving around in the house. In the air above the house, that netherworld ghost fire coldly burned under the faint green light in the dancing white bones. Ghostly's figure also seemed to gradually carry some strange eerie air, but no matter what until now, Mr. Ghost still could not do anything to Ghostly. In the coffin, Mr. Ghost's voice coldly snorted. Suddenly, the netherworld ghost fire in the air abruptly brightened. The 2 huge and chasing white bone arms suddenly paused, and then a sorrowful wail. Ka-ka-ka-ka. Ear-piercing sounds rang. Countless cracks appeared on the 2 huge arms from top to bottom. The next moment turned into innumerable small pieces, the edges extremely sharp, like a rain of bones, like a swarm of bees, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. Pounced towards Ghostly. Tanizka and the other 3 turned pale. Tani even cried out in shock. In the small house of death, it was already extremely difficult to dodge the two giant arms. This time it turned into a sky full of shattered bones rain, densely packed. How could it be dodged? Ghost Lee's face was as cold as frost, staring at the sky-covering bones. Seeing that the bones were about to reach him, he suddenly descended at high speed from the air, straight to the ground, his figure fast, almost like lightning. The innumerable bones in the air paused, as if they were intelligent, made a sharp sound in the air, stopped their momentum, made a turn in the air, and chased down. Ghostly landed on the ground in an instant, but before he could steady himself, Ghostly slapped the ground. His entire body flew out close to the ground, and that direction was the coffin where Mr. Ghost was. That ball of fire in the air shook, smashed down like lightning, and behind it, the innumerable bones whistled like the wind and chased up. The violent wind blew. The entire house shook. Ghostly's clothes fluttered in the wind, but at this moment where there were obstructions in front and pursuers at the back, he suddenly threw out the magical weapon soul-devouring stick in his hand. The strength was great, and there was even a strange power instigated in it. The sinister orb at the tip of the stick was flowing with dark red. Specks of blood veins lit up one by one. It was the scene of evil power at its peak. Just that the direction where the soul-devouring stick flew to, with a sound, stabbed into the wall beside Tanis Isian and the rest. Before they could react, a black light suddenly rushed to them. Before it reached them, there was already a strange cold air around them. Indistinctly, there was an inexplicable evil power like a demon in the air, affecting the blood in their bodies, feeling like it was about to burst out of their bodies. In a blink, the soul-devouring stick flew before them. With a sound, stabbed into the wall beside Tanis Isian's head, almost completely sunk in. Tanis Isian turned pale with fright, even forgot to scold Ghostly. Instantly felt a chill from his head to his feet. That black stick beside his ear seemed to have an invisible arm, trying to pull him over. He was frightened, forced himself to move his body away, panting heavily. And at this moment, the flying bone pieces and that ball of nether ghost fire like a landslide or tsunami suddenly stopped, frozen in the air. The next moment, a slight groan was heard from the wall. A human-shaped lump of earth suddenly flew out from the wall, pounced towards Ghostly, and the countless bone pieces, like losing their spiritual power, fell to the ground. Only that ball of nether ghost fire, instead, seemed to become brighter, flew back to the top of that lump of earth. Ghostly with a light whistle, his right hand beckoned. The soul-devouring stick flew back, stabbed into the lump of earth from behind, instantly disintegrated. A black figure flashed out, like a ghost, landed on that mysterious coffin deep inside the house. Looked like it was Mr. Ghost. The soul-devouring stick slowly landed, returned to Ghostly's hand. Ghostly stared at Mr. Ghost, did not make a move. Mr. Ghost also slowly turned, looked at Ghostly, suddenly said, "How did you find out where I was hiding?" Ghostly was silent, did not answer, only coldly looked at him. Mr. Ghost's black veil moved slightly, nodded his head, said, "Good. You and I may not be friends in the future. Of course you're not willing to say. Just that today is not the end yet. I want to see you, this person who is rumored to possess the three great sects' true ways. How is your skills?" Ghost Lee's pupils contracted slightly. Although he had used the soul-devouring to attack Mr. Ghost's hiding place and was considered to have gained the upper hand, but his expression did not relax at all. Intentionally or unintentionally, the soul-devouring stick stabbed into the lump of earth, but Mr. Ghost was really like a ghost, empty, completely unable to see the influence of the sinister orb's evil power on him. This person was mysterious and unfathomable. Ghostly had never seen one before. Watching the two of them confronting each other seemed to be another intense fight. Zhou Isian calmed down slightly, quickly pulled Xiao Huan and Wild Dog Taoist. Both of them were startled, knew that there were two people with extremely strange skills fighting. It was really extremely dangerous. Hurriedly found a hole in the already dilapidated wall and crawled out. Before leaving, Xiao Huan seemed to recall something, casually stretched out her hand and took Zhou Xingyun's memorial tablet. The three of them left the house one after another. Ghostly and Mr. Ghost naturally were clear, but Ghostly did not react. Mr. Ghost seemed to be unable to care about them with the enemy before him. Chapter 307. Just as they were about to leave, the wind suddenly howled again in the tomb. Sand and stones flew. Tannis and the rest of them stood outside the hole in the wall, were still pushed several chi away by that violent gale. Tannis pulled Xiao Huan and retreated far away, at least 3 zhangs away, then turned back to look at that house. Just that looking at it from such a distance, he could not sense that there were still 2 highly skilled people fighting fiercely in that house. It seemed like they had always controlled their powers within the boundaries of that house. Looking from afar, the room was flickering with strange lights. Other than the green light at the beginning, there were also gold, red, white, green, and many other strange lights. If it wasn't for the dense, ghostly aura and murderous aura, it would have been quite a sight to behold. Xiao Huan stared at that house, softly said to Tannis, who was preparing to run, "Grandpa, we are leaving like this. It is not good, right?" Tannis and Wild Dog Taoist were stunned, turned and looked at Xiao Huan. Tannis frowned and said, "Silly girl, what are you thinking? Those 2 fellows are big murderers. It is already not bad that we can escape with our lives. What are we still staying here for?" Xiao Huan hesitated for a moment, said, But he, after all, in order to save us, so?" Wild Dog Taoist looked at her, did not speak. Tannis impatiently said, "I say, why are you so muddle-headed? Ghostly's skills are very high. What is there to be afraid of? And besides, they are dogs biting each other. Oh, not right. One is called Ghostly, one is called Mr. Ghost. It should be said ghost fighting ghost. Ghost fighting ghost. What has it got to do with us? Quickly go, quickly go." Speaking, he pulled Xiao Huan's hand and left. Xiao Huan hesitated for a moment, but eventually was still pulled by Tannis. Wild Dog Taoist turned back to look at the strange lights flashing in the tomb. Chaotic lights flashed. Indistinctly, there were sounds of violent wind whistling. His expression was complicated. He was silent, paused for a moment, turned and chased after Tannis and the rest. In the tomb, it had already been half the time it took to drink a cup of tea. The originally messy house was now in a complete mess. There were broken stones and broken walls everywhere. Even the originally dilapidated ground now looked like it had been plowed by an ox after an earthquake. The soil was uneven and the stones were protruding. There was almost no place to stand. And Ghostly and Mr. Ghost right now both floated in the air, temporarily stopped, gazed at each other, seemed to be panting slightly. Only Xiao Hui on Ghostly's shoulder looked impatient, bored to death, opened its mouth and yawned, stretched its body. Mr. Ghost suddenly said, "Didn't expect your skills to advance so quickly. Just these 10 years. You could actually merge Taoism, Buddhism, evil 3 sects, true ways into one. Really not simple." Ghostly looked at this mysterious black-attired man, coldly said, "I also didn't expect that you are not from the evil sect, but southern border witchcraft ghost way." Speaking until here, dark red light suddenly appeared in his eyes, staring at Mr. Ghost. His voice also turned cold, said, "Since you are well versed in ghost way, then Bai Yao's soul return skill." Not waiting for him to finish, Mr. Ghost had already interrupted. "You are wrong. Although I know a little ghost way skills, but the soul return skill is the southern border black shaman tribe's secret skill. I do not know it. If not with my friendship with Ghost King, I would have long saved Bai Yao." Ghostly coldly looked at him. The red light in his eyes flickered, seemed to be considering if Mr. Ghost's words could be trusted. Instead, Mr. Ghost was silent for a moment, suddenly said, "Since you insist on protecting those 3 tonight, on the account that we are all from Ghost King's sect, I will let them off this once. You and I fighting here, there's not much meaning. Why don't we call it quits?" Ghostly sneered in his heart. Right now, he was no longer the ignorant youth. That soul-stirring battle just now. If his skills are not enough, or if he was not careful, he would have died countless times. At that time, no one would say anything about being from Ghost King's sect. Just that Mr. Ghost was really a mysterious and unfathomable figure. Although Ghostly was not afraid of him, but the battle just now, he knew that this person's skills were strange. He was a difficult person to deal with. He did not wish to force him rashly, nodded his head, indifferently said, "That is also good." Mr. Ghost unhurriedly landed. Right now the tomb was in a mess. The original coffins were mostly in pieces. Only that coffin on the ground was still intact, Mr. Ghost landed on it, was silent for a moment, said, "This time you came to Qing Yin Hill. What is your intention?" Ghostly coldly said, "And what is your intention?" Mr. Ghost indifferently said, "The world is in chaos. It is in troubled times. The demon beasts are wreaking havoc. This time the battle between the good faction and the demon beasts at Qing Yun is inevitable. Such a grand occasion. How can I not come and take a look?" Ghostly looked at him, said, "As you said, between the good faction and the demon beasts. Who will win?" Mr. Ghost's eyes suddenly flashed, as if he thought of something, said, "The strength of the demon beasts is out of everyone's expectation, especially that beast deity. Until now, no one has seen him fight. Even more do not know what his skills are like. But to be able to command these numerous powerful demon beasts, most likely this person must be an earth-shattering, exceptional figure. This battle, I'm afraid the demon beasts have 70% chance of winning." Ghostly's pupils contracted slightly, was silent for a long time, said, "That good faction 30%. Don't tell me it is all on the Zhu Xian sword formation." Mr. Ghost smiled and said, "Exactly. Qing Yin sect, Zhu Xian sword formation is really an anomaly. After 1,000 years, it is still the world's first great extraordinary spell formation. If the good faction want to win this time, I'm afraid their hopes are all on this sword formation. If not, there wouldn't be so many good faction figures. Not going to other places. All came to Qing Yin Hill." Ghostly silently looked up, his expression complicated, as if recalling some past events. His face indistinctly showed some pain. Mr. Ghost saw his expression, suddenly said, "Although you were born in Qing Yin in your early years, but there are some Qing Yin secrets. I'm afraid you still do not know, right?" Ghostly's expression changed, turned to look at Mr. Ghost, as if to see through this person. After a long while, slowly said word by word, "Please enlighten me." Mr. Ghost glanced at Ghostly, his tone calm, but his eyes seemed to have deep meaning, said, "Qing Yin Hill Zhu Xian sword formation's power is extraordinary, enough to slay evil. For 1,000 years it has always been Qing Yun sect's treasure. Legend has it that this sword formation was born from the nameless ancient scroll obtained by Qing Yun sect founder Qing Yunzi. Until 1,000 years ago, when the exceptional genius Qing Yu was born in the illusory moon cave seclusion for 13 years, came out with white hair, personally created it, gathered the spiritual power of Qing Yun's 7 mountains peaks into the formation, transformed the murderous energy of all living things in heaven and earth into the sword, invincible in the world." His voice paused for a moment. Then his voice seemed to be drifting, but his eyes were staring intently at Ghostly, slowly said, "And this world-shocking exceptional formation cannot be separated from celestial weapon." Ghostly sternly said, "Ancient sword, Zhu Xian?" Mr. Ghost nodded and said, "Exactly." Where exactly did the ancient sword Zhu Xian come from? It had always been mysterious and unfathomable. Until now, most likely even those Qing Yin Hill people also could not explain clearly. But one thing is for sure, the first time the Zhu Xian ancient sword appeared in the mortal world was when Qing Yi came out from seclusion in the illusory moon cave. For 13 years, his hand was holding this sword. And all along, this celestial weapon was never kept by Qing Yin's sect head personally, but placed in the illusory moon cave behind Qing Yin Hill. Mr. Ghost stopped in the grave, temporarily fell into silence. Ghostly looked deeply at him, slowly said, "How do you know so much?" Mr. Ghost waved his hand, said, "You don't have to bother about me, but what I said to you is indeed the truth. So the secret of Qing Yun's sect, Zhu Xian sword formation, most likely is in that illusory moon cave that only Qing Yun's sect head can enter." He smiled, said, "Do you understand?" Ghostly did not speak, only quietly stared at this person. After a long time, coldly said, "Who exactly are you?" Mr. Ghost clasped his hand behind his back, slowly said, "Anyway, just remember that I am not your enemy. That's all." Ghostly looked at this person for a moment, suddenly turned back, slowly drifted out. When his figure was about to disappear, his voice seemed to be heard from afar, but also like the sound of the wind, could not be heard clearly. Mr. Ghost stood alone in the darkness, motionless. That dot of netherworld ghost fire slowly dimmed down. Finally completely extinguished, this grave once again fell into silence. Just that after a while, the figure in the darkness, a low sneer was heard. Chapter 308. Early in the morning, when the sky had just brightened, the sky around Qingyun Hill was overcast with dark clouds. Soon it started raining. The rain became heavier. Very soon the world became a patch of gray. The pitter-patter of rain was everywhere, shrouding the towering mountains in a layer of mist, appearing hazy and mysterious. The sound of the rain beating on the green bamboo leaves seemed to have never changed for thousands of years, always seemed very lonely on Qingyun Hill. From the extended roofs covered with moss because of the long years, the water droplets turned into water curtains, strand by strand like pearls falling down, landed on the bluestone paved ground, splashing up like pearls. There was wind in the rain, blowing in the rain, carrying a faint moisture and rain powder, lingering between the windows, as if yearning for something. Lu Sueki stood in front of the window, looking at the misty mountain scenery outside, endless, in such a cold time, as if there was only the sound of the rain beating on the bamboo leaves reverberating between heaven and earth. Where the breeze passed, her black hair gently fluttered, the feeling of the rain powder brushing past her face, as if a wave of coldness seeped into her skin. She gently pursed her lips, her hands holding the window sill. The sound of the rain seemed to be far and yet near, in the end seemed to fall into the depths of her heart. Just that, would there still be ripples? Footsteps were heard outside the house. Someone gently knocked on the door. Lu Sueki silently turned back, quietly regained her senses from the misty rain, walked over to open the door. Senior Sister Wenmin was standing outside. Lu Sueki smiled faintly, said, "Senior Sister." Wenmin looked at her slightly haggard face, frowned, walked in. Lu Sueki then closed the door. Both of them sat down in the simple house. Wenmin first looked at the bed, saw the bedding was neat, sighed, said, "You didn't sleep last night?" Lu Sueki quietly said, "I couldn't sleep." Wenmin looked at Lu Sueki, felt a stab of pain in her heart. She entered Small Bamboo Valley earlier than Lu Sueki and had always been on good terms with Lu Sueki's aloof character, other than her mentor Shueiwe. Only Wenmin was her best friend and could speak a few words with her. Recently, Lu Sueki's troubles kept on coming. Wenmin, who was watching from the side, also felt anxious. Although she was anxious, but there was nothing she could do, could only watch Lu Sueki's relationship with her teacher and Qingyun's sect elders getting worse and worse. The room was silent. Wenmin did not know what to say, but after a moment, Anan spoke softly, "Senior Sister, this time because of my matter, I am really sorry to you." Wenmin was stunned, said, "What?" Lu Sueki said, "I heard that a few days ago, Big Bamboo Valley's Tian Shishu and Suru Shishu personally brought Song Darren Song Shixiang to propose marriage, but teacher rejected and even quarreled with Tian Shishu." Wenmin laughed bitterly. In her smile, there was a tinge of bitterness, slowly shook her head and said, "Ai, that is also nothing much. Besides, this has nothing to do with you. It is all because he and I are not fated, and we all know teacher has always hated Big Bamboo Valley people." Lu Sueki silently shook her head, said, "No. That day was when I contradicted teacher and angered her. So I also implicated you. If not with Suru teacher uncle beside, Tian teacher uncle also willing to give such a big face to personally propose, your matter most likely would be successful. But, Senior Sister, I am really sorry." Wenmin smiled, let out a long breath, said, "All right, don't blame yourself here. I'm not doing well, and teacher is only in a moment of anger. There may still be a chance in the future." Speaking till here, she glanced at Lu Sueki, said, "Let's not talk about my matter. What about you? What do you intend to do? You can't always be in a deadlock with teacher like this, right?" Lu Sueki's face turned pale, was silent. Wenmin pondered for a long time, said, "Junior Sister, I more or less know what you're thinking, but it is not a solution for you to continue like this, Zhang. That person, he after all has already entered the evil way, despised by the world's good faction, and taking a step back, this time you went to the southwest, at the battlefield where the evil sect and the demon beasts fought, the scene there you." Wenmin suddenly stopped, did not continue, because right now Lu Sueki's face seemed to have instantly turned pale, even her clear eyes seemed to be engraved with deep pain. The room was silent for a long time, the sound of rain outside the window, loneliness without words. Finally, Wenmin still spoke in a low voice, I'm afraid he is really not in this world anymore. You being so persistent, the one suffering will only be you. Lusweki's face was pale, did not speak, slowly stood up, walked to the window and gazed out. That mountain of rain and mist, misty and lingering, like a dream or an illusion. Even the rain droplets blowing against her face seemed to carry a trace of unreality in the coldness. I know, this cold and beautiful girl, in this river of misty rain, softly said, maybe he is really gone. Sometimes I also thought, actually to him, this might be a release. I also know, teacher scolding me, is not wrong. It is all my fault. I should not have wishful thinking. I should not. Should not. Her voice suddenly choked with sobs. One min stood up, was about to go up to comfort her. Unexpectedly, Lusweki suddenly turned, her white clothes fluttering like a lonely cloud. There seemed to be water droplets at the corner of her eyes, crystal clear, with a trace of sadness that had never been seen before, said, Senior sister, I know, but I just can't let it go. Even if I sever this emotion thousands of times, but in the end, I still can't sever it, can't escape. After returning from the Southwest, I have told myself countless times, he is dead, he is dead, everything is over. But every night after I fall asleep, I dream of that tragic scene in Venomous Serpent Valley, dream that he was being. Lusweki suddenly stopped. Her expression was so agitated that even one man was worried, but Lusweki very quickly calmed down. Only in her eyes, there was still that sadness. And then, I woke up at the start, my whole body covered in cold sweat, like being in an ice house. She quietly looked at one min, and then her expression gradually turned frail, as if her body also started to tremble, said, Senior sister, what happened to me? What exactly happened to me? She suddenly threw herself into one min's arms. One min hugged her shoulders, felt her frail body was trembling slightly. Beside her ears, her quiet voice was heard. Senior sister, I can't take it anymore. I really can't take it anymore. One min was silent, tightly hugged Lusweki, who had never been so frail before. This once aloof cold girl, right now seemed to be the world's most sorrowful person. Silence once again covered everything. The rain outside the window was heavy. Low choking sounds seemed to be heard in the wind. Outside the house, at the edge of the bamboo forest, Shueyu Master stood silently, holding a green umbrella, staring blankly at that house in the storm. Then, she slowly turned and left, disappeared into the bamboo forest. Between heaven and earth, the wind and rain were howling. It was a desolate time. In Heong City, it was also raining. Tanizka, Tani, and Wild Dog Taoist, three of them, walked out from another secluded alley, merged into the crowded main street, tried to walk a few steps, and then retreated to the roadside. Firstly, there were too many people. It was difficult to walk. Secondly, they wanted to take shelter from the rain and discuss. And this time the three of them were divided into two factions. Xiaohuan insisted to go back to the morgue again to take a look. Zhou Yixian refused no matter what. Wild Dog Taoist this time, for the first time, supported Zhou Yixian. Tani's strength was weak, but she was eloquent. 1 against 2. In addition, Wild Dog Taoist, although this time his opinion was different from hers, but often with a glare from Tani he could not speak, so most of the time only Tanizka opposed. Right now the three of them were standing at the roadside. Tanizka lowered his voice and said, You silly girl, why are you still going back to such a dangerous place, going back to die? Tani curled her lips, said, To think that you have lived for so many years, grandfather, do you know there's a thing called morality? Tanizka angrily said, Morality? Morality my ass. What morality are you talking about after you're dead? That ghost-like guy is very powerful. If we go back, aren't we going to die? Wild Dog Taoist nodded, said, That's right, going back is really not appropriate. Tani's gaze swept over, rolled her eyes at him. Wild Dog Taoist's heart jumped, immediately could not continue. Tani turned and looked at Tanizka, said, Grandfather, last night, if not for him saving us, we would already be dead and would not be standing here arguing about morality or not. Isn't it wrong to go back now? Chapter 309. Tanizka's expression did not change, said, It is because we were saved by him, so we must cherish our lives even more, if not if we walk right into the trap and fall into the tiger's mouth. Won't we be letting down Ghost Lee's good intentions? Tani choked. For a moment could not think of anything to refute Taniska. Taniska could not help but felt pleased, laughed, and said, "Nothing to say?" Tani angrily said, "You clearly know that person is ghostly and unfathomable. Don't tell me you don't care about your savior at all." Taniska was composed, said, "Don't worry. Ghostly that fellow has skills. Magical weapon. In terms of ghostly energy, I'm afraid he is even more sinister than that coffin. Even if he wants to die, it will be difficult. What are you worried about?" After a pause, he continued, "Besides, didn't you read his fortune 10 years ago? You've already said, this person has the one in a million chaos devil physique. Although there are many twists and turns, but he is not destined to die prematurely. Then what are you worried about? Why? You have read my fortune before?" Suddenly, a voice came from beside them. The three of them were shocked, turned around, and saw Ghostly had suddenly appeared beside them. In broad daylight, he seemed to have flashed out from the rain. Although the rain was already heavy, but there were too many people escaping from the disaster in Hyang City. Most of them were also filled with fear of the incoming demon beasts and did not care about the rain. In fact, these days, the people in Hyang City who were too tense and out of control. Fortunately, Qin Yun's sect disciples were in the city to maintain order. Most of them would arrive in a short period of time and settle it, but the people were in a state of panic, also made this city immersed in an atmosphere on the edge of madness. Tani and the rest were stunned for a moment, and then Tani was overjoyed, could not help but softly called out, "It's you." But Taniska and Wild Dog Taoist frowned at the same time. Taniska snorted, actually said the same words, "It's you." Ghostly ignored the two of them, first glanced at Xiao Huan, saw the evident genuine joy on her young face. His eyes couldn't help but reveal a trace of warmth, nodded slightly, said, "It's me." At this moment, the monkey Xiao Hui, who was lying on Ghost Lee's shoulder, also called out to Xiao Huan because of the rain, grinned, and seemed to be very happy to see Xiao Huan. Xiao Huan beamed with joy and said to Xiao Hui, "You still remember me?" "Hee hee." As she spoke, she raised her head to look at Ghost Lee, hesitated for a moment, and said, "Last night, were you all right?" Ghostly nodded, said, "I am fine." Xiao Huan was then relieved, looked at Ghostly a few more times. Suddenly, for some reason, her face blushed and her eyes turned to Xiao Hui, smiled, and opened her arms, said, Come over and let me hug." Xiao Hui giggled twice. Suddenly both its legs kicked, left Ghost Lee's shoulder, and jumped straight into Xiao Huan's bosom. Xiao Huan giggled, felt the monkey's body was wet, and was about to take out a piece of cloth to wipe it. Unexpectedly, the monkey also seemed to feel uncomfortable. Right now, its body suddenly trembled. Immediately, the water droplets splashed everywhere. Xiao Huan cried out in shock, but was unwilling to leave the monkey behind. Quickly closed her eyes. After a moment, her face and clothes were full of water droplets from the monkey. Xiao Huan opened her eyes, glared at Xiao Hui. The monkey's three eyes blinked and blinked, not moving. Xiao Huan snorted. With a fling of her hands, threw Xiao Hui back to Ghost Lee. Xiao Hui quickly climbed up to Ghost Lee's shoulder. Watching Xiao Huan hurriedly tidied up her clothes, could not help but laughed out again. Xiao Huan did not know whether to laugh or cry, bit her lips, and secretly glanced at Ghost Lee, and then lowered her head to tidy up her clothes. Ghost Lee turned and glanced at Zhou Yixian. Zhou Yixian felt guilty, said, "Hey, stinky brat, I was your savior. You cannot act recklessly." Ghostly pondered for a moment, looked around, saw that the commoners were minding their own business. No one noticed here. He asked Zhou Yixian, "Who exactly are you?" Zhou Yixian raised his head, said, "Old man is an expert." Xiao Huan and Wild Dog Tao's bodies shook. Clearly this answer was extremely strange. But Ghostly obviously ignored this expert. Without batting an eyelid, directly asked, "Last night your earth escape skill has been lost for a long time, but according to legend, this level of Dao skill was the ability of Qin Yun's sect founder Qin Yunzi when he roamed the Jianghu. Why do you have it?" He looked deeply at Zhou Yixian, said, "What relationship do you have with Qin Yun's sect?" Zhou Yixian, after a moment of silence, said, "All right, now that things have come to this, I will not hide it from you all." Xiao Huan and Wild Dog Taoist were surprised. saw Zhou Yixian's serious expression and did not look like he was joking. They could not help but became serious. Zhou Yixian unhurriedly said, "Actually, it is like this, old man, when I was young. Handsome, suave, talented, exceptionally intelligent. Don't look at me like that. I will continue. When old man was young, I gathered herbs for a living. Once I went deep into the mountains to gather herbs, accidentally fell down a 10,000 zhongs cliff. Ghostly, Xiao Huan and Wild Dog Taoist frowned at the same time, but Zhou Yixian seemed to be getting happier as he spoke, continued. But old man was lucky. My clothes were hooked by a pine tree in midair, blocked most of my fall, and then I fell down again. Unexpectedly, there was a pool at the bottom of the cliff, so old man was lucky and did not die." Xiao Huan could not help but interrupted, "Grandpa, why do I seem to have heard this story from somewhere? And it seems like many people said so. In many historical novels, those heroes all fell down the cliff like this." Zhou Yixian glared at Xiao Huan, angrily said, "Is it me who said it or you who said it? Shut up." "Oh, where was I? Oh, I fell off a cliff. But I was lucky and didn't die. Then I accidentally discovered a secret manual left behind by a senior expert from who knows how many years ago. I was born to be intelligent, so I comprehended the secret manual at the bottom of the cliff. I ate the spiritual energy of heaven and earth as food and traveled through time. Finally, I achieved enlightenment and became an immortal." Ghostly coldly said, "Other than your name, where else do you resemble celestial?" Zhou Yixian paused for a moment, looked embarrassed, but then returned to normal, sternly said, "Old man is doing good deeds for the common people. That's why I roam the world." Ghostly indifferently said, "Then are you going to tell me your earth escape skill is learned from that secret manual?" Zhou Yixian nodded his head repeatedly, sternly said, "That's right. You are worth teaching." But after speaking, he turned and looked at the crowd. Not only Ghostly, Xiao Huan and Wild Dog Taoist faces also clearly showed the word "don't believe." Ghostly looked at this person. He naturally would not believe such nonsense, but since Zhou Yixian said such words, no matter what, he was not willing to reveal his identity. But although this person seemed to be related to Qing Yun Hill, but he had interacted with him in the past, there was nothing inappropriate. Moreover, in Ghostly's heart, he more or less looked at Zhou Yixian and the rest in a different light. With that thought, Ghostly did not press them further, but he did not wish to say anything more, was about to speak a few words to them and leave. Suddenly at this moment, from the south side of Heyang City, a scream of terror erupted, the sound extremely mournful. Everyone was shocked and looked back. The people on the street also turned their heads. They saw that the street that was originally filled with people was now filled with people. The towering city walls in the distance were also filled with people, but at this moment, they were all running in all directions. In the misty rain, a mournful cry sounded in the horizon. A huge, ferocious bird opened its arms. A pair of big eyes glinting with blood-red, ferocious glints swooped down from the sky. The pair of wings spread out. It was half the width of the city gate, really terrifying. A huge gust of wind was carried by this huge bird. A gale assaulted. The mast on the city walls was actually snapped by the swift and fierce wind, fell down with a loud crash. The people on top of the wall were extremely frightened and ran in all directions. The huge bird descended from the sky and let out a shrill cry. Its huge and sharp claws were like the hands of a devil, and it grabbed two people who were running. It then soared into the sky and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The entire Heyang city immediately fell into a deathly silence after a long time, not knowing who was the first to shout, "Evil beast, the evil beast is here, we are finished." In that instant, the entire city sank into hysteria. Countless people wailed loudly, wails and wails everywhere, a scene of chaos. Only the misty rain between heaven and earth, still quietly falling, as if nothing had happened. Chapter 310. Deep roars were heard from all directions. On the plains 200 miles away from Qing Yun Hill, more and more southern border strange beasts appeared and gathered. Constantly some beasts roared to the sky. Among the beasts, there were 6 or 7 especially huge beasts, far larger than the surrounding ordinary beasts, standing among the beasts and growling. The surrounding beasts seemed to be especially fearful of them. The misty rain was misty, the dark clouds in the sky thickened, Gradually at the edge of the clouds, some light flashed. After a moment, finally rumbling thunder was heard. The dark world, unspeakable vicissitudes of time. Lightning flashed across the sky, reflecting a vigorous figure. The huge bird demon that had just returned from Hyang City descended from the sky. With the residual light from the lightning, the beast could see that the huge bird's claws were holding two people. For a moment, hundreds of beasts near and far all roared loudly. The momentum was so strong, it made one's hair stand. The huge wings fluttered in the wind and rain. The huge bird circled above the beast for a while. Suddenly its claws loosened, two figures like stones fell down. Just that although the figures were tumbling in the air, but they did not struggle and instead looked very stiff. Most likely in the middle of the journey, these two pitiful people could not withstand the huge bird demon's strength and died under these two huge claws. The beast's roars instantly rose, teeth gnashing sounds rose and fell. In a moment at least several beasts leapt up and pounced. In the desolate rain, only a few spots of blood could be seen indistinctly, and finally disappeared again. The huge bird circling in the sky gave two sharp cries, flew for a moment, and then seemed to have discovered something, folded its wings, descended from the sky into the densely packed beasts. Just as its huge body was about to land on the ground, it suddenly spread its wide wings again, making a hoo sound. A strong gust of wind blew the nearby beasts to the ground, causing them to cry out woo-woo. A gust of strong wind blew. The huge bird soared over the beasts like that. Along the way, numerous beasts bowed their heads in fear and avoided it. Encountering a few equally powerful huge beasts, they also glared at each other, not showing any weakness. The giant bird soared all the way, its body also up and down, or swept over the heads of the beasts, or leaped over the branches of the trees. Sometimes when it encountered an unbelievably huge beast like a giant elephant, it also directly passed through the bottom of the beast's body. The wind and rain swayed. Thunder and lightning flashed in the sky. The huge bird's figure in the wind and rain like duckweed. Finally, it again made a sharp cry, descended from the sky. That was the deepest part of the demon beast horde. Among the black masses of strange, ferocious beasts, under the lightning in the horizon, an oilcloth umbrella suddenly appeared, a few peach blossoms painted on the green umbrella, gently fluttering in the wind and rain. The giant bird landed next to the umbrella. Only then could it be seen clearly that a wooden stick was tied to the handle of the umbrella. It was lengthened and stuck between a rock. Under the umbrella sat a young man dressed in luxurious silk clothes. He held a wine pot and a wine cup in his hand and was drinking by himself. Beside that youth, the sleepy beast Tao-Tai was lying on the rock. Seeing the huge bird landing, Tao-Tai only opened its eyes slightly, took a look, and then closed them again. The surrounding beasts made uneasy cries. The huge bird landed on the ground. Its mouth made two gwa-gwa sounds. Its huge wings flapped. Immediately, the several beasts at the original spot were blown away. For a moment, angry cries rose and fell, but none of the beasts dared to come up to challenge. The huge bird glanced left and right, looking arrogant, as if disdainful of these beasts, and then turned its head, facing that youth, and for a moment, it seemed especially respectful. Gwa 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 gwa. Facing that youth under the umbrella, the huge bird called out for a while. That youth seemed to understand the bird language, slowly nodded. The huge bird called out a few more times, stood at the same spot. After a moment, stretched out its beak to clean its feathers. The sky, full of rain, had long drenched its entire body. After cleaning a few times, it quickly gave up, looked up at the night sky, slowly shrunk its head into its wings, sheltering from the wind and rain. The rain was getting heavier. The youth drank cup after cup, never stopping, only occasionally lost in thought, staring blankly at the distance for a moment, and then silently lowered his head and again drank. Just that no matter how much liquor he drank, his face never showed any signs of tipsiness. Finally, that pot of wine was finished, gently slid from his hand in the wind and rain, landed on the muddy ground. The youth slowly stood up. The surrounding beasts stirred, revealing an extremely fearful look. Just that in that youth's eyes, these countless ferocious beasts seemed to be nothing, did not put them in his heart. In his eyes, right now, only silently looked at the horizon. The dark clouds were heavy, the wind and rain rustling. Tao-Tai quietly called out, stood up beside him. That youth was silent, turned and gently patted Tao Tai's head. After a long time said, "You also feel lonely, Tao Tai?" Tao Tai growled, but in the end no one knew what it meant. That youth looked up at the sky, for a long time, did not say a word. Qingyan Hill, on Tongtian Peak. It had already rained for an entire night, and it was still pouring incessantly. The Good Faction people led by the three big sects of Good Faction were gathered in the Crystal Hall to discuss. The sounds of arguments were heard from time to time. And the three masters seated at the main seats, Qingyan's sect Reverend Daoxian, Tian'in Temple Puhong Master, and Funxiang Valley Yunilon, were also quietly discussing something. The three of them frowned tightly, clearly burdened with worries, deeply worried about this demon beast catastrophe. Suddenly, hurried footsteps were heard from outside the Crystal Hall. Everyone was startled. Qingyan's sect's eldest disciple, Xiao Yikai, quickly walked into the hall, paused for a moment, nodded to the surrounding Good Faction people, and then quickly walked straight to Reverend Daoxian, whispered in his ear. Everyone's attention was on the two of them. All saw Xiao Yikai's grim expression, extremely unusual, and following his words, Reverend Daoxian's solemn face did not even have a trace of smile. What was left was solemnity. Gradually, everyone's hearts were in their throats. Indistinctly felt that inexplicable pressure seemed to be gradually descending on this place. Reverend Daoxian, after listening to Xiao Yikai's words, glanced at him, quietly asked again. Xiao Yikai silently nodded, his expression certain. Reverend Daoxian heaved a long sigh, nodded. Xiao Yikai silently turned and stood behind Reverend Daoxian. Puhong Master and Yun Elon also looked over. Puhong Master chanted, "Umebab Buddha, sect head Daoxian. Don't tell me there is news of the demon beasts?" Reverend Daoxian nodded, stood up. The Good Faction people stirred. Reverend Daoxian composed himself. A determined look gradually appeared on his face. In a clear voice said, "Fellow friends, I have just received news. A large group of demon beasts have already appeared in the wilderness 200 miles from Qingyan Hill, will arrive in a few days, and outside Heiyang City at the foot of the mountain, traces of demon beasts have also started to be discovered." As soon as these words were spoken, it instantly caused everyone to be in an uproar. For a time, panic, fear, rage, sighing, and various other expressions appeared on the faces of everyone. The calamity that had pressed down on their hearts for many days had finally arrived before them. Reverend Daoxian looked at everyone's expressions, pressed his hands down. The crowd's noises slowly quietened down. When the surroundings quietened down, Reverend Daoxian loudly said, "Everyone, now that the catastrophe is before us, the lives of the world will depend on our battle with this group of evildoers. Everyone here are all Good Faction masters for the survival of the world. In the battle in the future, you and I will do our best. As the saying heavens will is free, I believe heaven will not seal off one's way. Although these demons are temporarily rampant, but it will definitely not last long." In the crowd, after a moment of silence, someone opened his mouth and said, "Reverend is right. Reverend, rest assured, with so many masters here, if we risk our lives, I believe it will not be difficult to defeat that demon beasts." Exactly. For a moment they seemed to be motivated. The crowd's expressions slowly relaxed and happy. After all, no matter what, there were still the three great sects and these masters. Even further, on this Qingyan Hill, there was still that legendary indestructible, undefeatable Zhu Xian sword formation. Looking at Reverend Daoxian's confident expression, what was there to worry about? Chapter 311. Reverend Daoxian, under the watchful eyes of countless Good Faction people, slowly smiled, spoke a few words to the crowd, and then returned to Crystal Hall with Puhong Master, Yun Elon, and Xiao Yikai. Once out of sight, Reverend Daoxian's face immediately turned solemn. Puhong Master and Yun Elon's faces were also not relaxed. The group walked to a secluded room in the inner hall. Xiao Yikai followed at the back, closed the door. Reverend Daoxian turned to Xiao Yikai and said, "Yikai, tell me the details." Xiao Yikai nodded and said, "Yes." Disciple patrolled the Heiyang City at the foot of the mountain. Within a day, I received reports one after another, especially at the Heiyang City. Disciple saw with my own eyes a huge bird demon appearing. Looking at its appearance, It looked extremely similar to one of the 13 demon beasts, the Azura bird. Reverend Daoxian and the other two masters looked at each other. Their faces solemn. Xiao Yikai solemnly said. Other than that, the rest of the junior brothers who were secretly investigating the surrounding areas have all reported back. They all found traces of demon beasts, among them the most concentrated 200 miles to the southwest, but the few junior brothers who were investigating 200 miles away. Disciple waited for a long time, but there was no news of them. Xiao Yikai's face gradually dimmed. Reverend Daoxian's face darkened. Yin Elon beside him sighed. Puhong Master softly chanted. Reverend Daoxian pondered for a moment, nodded, said to Xiao Yikai, "Seems like it is not wrong. The demon beasts are indeed here." Yi Tsai. He looked at his most beloved disciple, said, "You go down the mountain again. Inform the disciples who are spread out to investigate to withdraw. The range is about 100 miles around Qingyun Hill. Remember to remind them not to cross the boundary to investigate, and even more not to recklessly fight with the demon beasts to prevent accidents." Xiao Yikai nodded, as if he thought of something, said, "Teacher, then what about the commoners in Heong City?" Reverend Daoxian was silent for a moment, turned and looked at Puhong Master and Yun Elon. Puhong Master placed his palms together and bowed his head. Yin Elon indifferently said, "As matters stand, everything is led by Sect Head Reverend. Please, Sect Head Reverend, make the decision." Reverend Daoxian slightly nodded his head, considered to express his gratitude. After a moment of silence, spoke to Xiao Yikai. "This matter is indeed tricky, but Heong City is too dangerous, and right now, we really cannot go down the mountain to protect the people. Immediately go down the mountain to Heong City. Lead all the Qingyun disciples in Heong City. Tell the people in Heong City to quickly head north, at least cross Qingyun Mountains. Those demon beasts' biggest target right now is our Qingyun Hillgood faction, not those commoners. This way we can temporarily ensure safety." Xiao Yikai was stunned for a moment, but looking at Reverend Daoxian's expressionless face, eventually still silently nodded, quietly said, "Yes, then disciple will go now." Reverend Daoxian said, "There is one more thing. Quickly inform Qingyun's other 6 branch heads. Immediately come to Tongtian Peak. I want to see them immediately. There is something to discuss." Xiao Yikai nodded. "Yes, disciple will go immediately." Reverend Daoxian sighed and said, "Be careful on your journey. Go." Xiao Yikai nodded and left. Illusory Moon Cave? Tanis Ka was surprised, his brows frowned. A rare solemn expression appeared on his face, hesitated for a moment, said, "Why are you asking this for?" Ghostly indifferently said, "Aren't you always experienced and knowledgeable? I am suddenly very interested in this cave. So I asked you, how much do you know about this illusory moon cave?" Tanis Ka glanced at Ghostly, saw that his expression did not change, could not tell what he was thinking, an unfathomable look. At this time, they were still in Heong City, but at this moment, the atmosphere in Heong City was completely different because of the arrival of the huge, strange bird demon beast last night. The original worries had finally become a reality. Under the heavy pressure of fear, more people had already reached the edge of collapse. From time to time on the streets, there were people shouting and talking nonsense. Their behavior was almost like a lunatic. Tanis Ka looked away. A thought flashed in his mind. Slowly said, You wouldn't be thinking of doing something inexplicable, right?" Xiao Huan and Wild Dog Taoist's eyes landed on Ghostly. Xiao Hui on Ghostly's shoulder also seemed to feel something, grinned at them, and made a face. Ghostly indifferently said, "What do you think I can do?" Tanis Ka laughed, said, "Actually, I don't know much about Illusory Moon Cave. This cave was originally not famous. Only because 1,000 years ago Qingyi founder was in seclusion to comprehend Tao. At the same time, Zhu Xian ancient sword appeared in there. That made it famous. But these few years it was only used as the ancient sword Zhu Xian's collection place, and all along only Qingyun's sect head could enter. So this reputation also gradually faded." Ghostly said, "Oh, anything else?" Tanis Ka hesitated for a moment, said, "I don't care what you want to do, but that place you better not go." Ghostly's brows raised, said, "Why?" Tanis Ka sighed, said, "It's not like you don't know your current identity, that Illusory Moon Cave is Qin Yun's important place. If you go to Qin Yun Hill and be discovered by someone, don't forget, on Qin Yun Hill right now, there are more than thousands of good faction people. If your identity is exposed, I'm afraid even if you transform into a bird, it will be difficult to escape. Ghostly coldly said, "That's my problem. You only need to tell me about that illusory moon cave." Tannis shook his head, muttered in a low voice, "Youngsters nowadays are really impatient, all right. That cave is named Illusory Moon. It is rumored that on the night of the bright moon, there are strange rocks in front of the cave, colorful and gorgeous, like a dream or fantasy. But more importantly, there is actually a natural abnormality in the cave. After people walk in, it is like falling into a dream. Those without a strong will be deeply trapped, unable to extricate themselves. Their whole cultivation will be destroyed in one day." Ghostly was startled, said, "What? There is such a thing?" Tannis snorted, assessed Ghostly from head to toe, said, "I advise you to stop your wishful thinking. If you enter that illusory moon cave, there is only death." Ghostly sneered, said, "Why do you think so?" Tannis said, "I know you're not convinced and also know your character is tough, but I tell you honestly." His face slowly turned solemn. Unexpectedly, there was a kind of imposing manner without anger. In a deep voice said, "The so-called firm will is not how your character is. From what I see, your life is full of ups and downs, twists and turns like a mountain. Your heart is filled with innumerable sorrows. If you fall into the dreamland, I'm afraid you will inevitably be affected and unable to extricate yourself." He paused, seemed a little hesitant, but after pondering for a moment, eventually still said, "Also, your magical weapon is an extremely evil object. Your blood and spirit have already merged with the sinister orb and other evil powers. This kind of evil in that dreamland, it is more harmful than beneficial to you. So, I advise you, better give up on this thought." Ghostly looked at Tannis as if it was the first time he saw this person, quietly watched. Tannis instead faced him calmly. After a long time, Ghostly did not say a word, slowly turned around. At this moment, there was another commotion in Heyong City. A large number of Qing Yun disciples appeared on the streets, loudly said something to the people on the streets. Tannis and the rest were stunned, squeezed over to listen carefully. It was the Qing Yun disciples announcing to the crowd, the demon beasts were coming. Heyong City was already extremely unsafe. To let the people go north, at least have to pass through Qing Yun Mountains. Tannis listened with a bitter expression, shook his head and sighed incessantly, turned and spoke to Xiao Huan and the rest. "AI, this is bad, don't know. Hey, where's Ghostly, that guy?" Xiao Huan and Wild Dog Taoist were surprised, quickly turned around, but it was empty behind them. The crowd was innumerable. Where could they see Ghostly's figure? The sea of people was vast, noisy. Tannis who was standing in the crowd, frowned and shook his head. Xiao Huan beside him was silent, only quietly looked afar. After a long time, softly sighed. In that voice, there seemed to be some sorrow. Chapter 3:12. The rain stopped for the time being, but the dark clouds on the horizon were still pressing very low, layer upon layer, making one feel suffocated. The north gate of Heyong City opened wide. Countless commoners poured out from the city, heading north. Along the way, the sounds of crying were incessant. No one knew where this journey would lead to. Xiao Yikai led the Qing Yun disciples to maintain order along the way, constantly comforting the anxious commoners. Again and again told the surrounding people, this time it was only a temporary departure. As long as they defeated the evil beasts, the calamity would be over and everyone could return to their homes again. After a busy day, they were really thirsty, exhausted. Looking at the long line of people slowly moving forward, Xiao Yikai silently shook his head, was about to rest for a while, when he suddenly saw Lin Jingyu from Longshou Valley, standing not far away. Also looking exhausted, he and Lin Jingyu were considered familiar, walked over and gently patted Lin Jingyu's shoulder. Lin Jingyu turned back, revealed a smile, opened his mouth to speak, but unexpectedly his voice was hoarse. "Senior brother, you are also here." Xiao Yikai acknowledged. Both of their gazes met, and then looked at the surrounding commoners. For a moment, both shook their heads and smiled bitterly. The ancient path towards the north, looking from afar, seemed to be the same gloomy sky, not a single ray of light. Tannis Xiao Huan and Wild Dog Taoist were also among the crowd. Wild Dog Taoist because there were too many Qing Yun disciples around, and because of his strange appearance, he used a cloth hat to cover most of his face, followed behind Tanizka and Xiaohuan. Tanizka walked in the crowd, glancing left and right, brows tightly frowned, sighing from time to time. Xiaohuan softly said, "Grandpa, what is it?" Zhou Yixian shook his head, said, "This battle concerns the fate of the common people, but I am afraid Qing Yun Hill Good faction's chance of victory is not big." Xiaohuan was silent. More or less knew why Zhou Yixian said that. Ever since the evil beasts appeared in the mortal world, in a short period of time, from the southern border to the central plains, sweeping the world, invincible, tyrannical strength, cruel methods, the disasters caused had already surpassed all the natural and man-made disasters in the past. Until today, the world's last resistance was mostly concentrated on Qing Yun Hill, and most of the people's hopes were mostly on Qing Yun Sec's legendary indestructible Zhu Xian sword formation. Xiaohuan forced a smile and said, "Isn't there still the Zhu Xian sword formation? There is still hope." Tanizka shrugged his shoulders, said, Forget it. We are just ordinary people. Leave it to fate." Speaking until here, he paused for a moment, suddenly turned his head and looked at the lofty towering Qing Yun Hill, right now hidden in the heavy dark clouds, abruptly glanced at it and then slowly said, "But these good faction people, don't let the backyard catch fire." Xiaohuan was stunned, said, "What backyard catch fire?" Tanizka laughed strangely, shook his head and did not answer, walked forward. Tani glared at him, too lazy to ask, after all in this situation, who would have the mood to think for the good faction. Only Wild Dog Taoist, who was following behind Tanizka and Tani, his body seemed to tremble, the pair of eyes hiding under the cloth hat, flickered incessantly. This long queue of people walked for a day. Lin Jingyu and the rest of the Qing Yun disciples were also busy for a whole day. Seeing that most of the people had passed, Lin Jingyu then heaved a sigh of relief. Really felt that doing these things was more tiring than fighting 3 or 5 ferocious evil beasts. Just when he was thinking of taking a good rest, suddenly a child walked past, kept looking at Lin Jingyu. Lin Jingyu felt puzzled, looked at the child. His clothes were tattered, obviously not a rich family child, but his face was delicate, eyes bright, very adorable. Lin Jingyu smiled, softly said, "Little brother, what's the matter?" The child hesitated for a moment, raised his hand and passed over a piece of paper, timidly said, "Just now an uncle asked me to pass this note to you." Lin Jingyu was surprised, took the note from the child's hand, opened it and read. There were only 4 simple words written on it. "Backyard fire." Lin Jingyu frowned, pondered for a moment, said to the child, "What does this mean? Right, where's the person who passed you the note?" The child turned and pointed ahead. Suddenly a perplexed look appeared on his face, said, Gone. Just now it was an uncle wearing a hat. He asked me to pass it to you." Lin Jingyu looked at the note in his hand, frowned tightly, looked up after a moment, only saw the vast sea of people. Where would he go to find that mysterious man wearing a hat? Qing Yun Hill, small bamboo valley. Chonglang. A sound like a dragon's roar, a room of fine light, Tianya's celestial sword in her hand, Anan expressionless, holding the sword and watching. Her unparalleled beauty was reflected on the blade that was like autumn water. It really was as if she was more beautiful than snow. She stared deeply at the sharp sword blade, and Tianya also seemed to feel something, faintly trembled, as if excited. "What are you thinking about?" Wenmin's voice was heard from beside. Anan quietly watched the sword in her hand, after a long time said, "Don't know after a few days on this sword blade, whose blood will flow." Wenmin slowly walked to her, patted Anan's shoulder, softly said, "All right, my good junior sister, now that the calamity is upon us, teacher will not pursue the matter of you disobeying her. As long as we do our best in this battle, I think heaven will not seal off one's way." Anan nodded, but for some reason, there was a lingering gloominess in her heart, quietly said, "Yes." Wenmin smiled and said, "That's good. Teacher is still waiting for us to go to Tongtian Peak together. Let's go." Anan nodded again, kept Tianya, breathed deeply, and then followed behind Wenmin, walked out. Following the winding corridors, they came to the front of small bamboo valley. Shuiwa Master was already standing there, Beside her stood a few small bamboo valley female disciples. Wunmin and Anan walked up. Wunmin was the first to speak. Teacher, Sweki Jr.'s sister, and I have arrived. Shueihua Master clasped her hands behind her back. Right now, slowly turn around. Her eyes glanced at Wunmin and then at Anan. Anan lowered her head, not daring to meet her teacher's eyes, only softly said, Teacher, I am here. Disciple is unfilial, made you angry. Shueihua Master indifferently said, I don't have time to be angry. Anan's face seemed to turn pale again. The others beside did not dare to speak. Wunmin shook her head slightly, looked at Shueihua Master, with a pleading tone called out, Teacher. Shueihua Master snorted, suddenly sighed, said, Forget it. Let's put all these aside for now. This battle, if we can survive, then we will talk again. The disciples did not dare to reply. Shueihua Master waved her sleeve, turned and indifferently said, Let's go. Sect Head Reverend is still waiting for us at Tongtian Peak. Her voice had just landed. A white light wrapped her figure and shot up to the sky. Wunmin looked at Anan. Anan forced a smile. Wunmin quietly said, It's all right, don't think too much. After speaking, she turned and spoke to the rest. Let's go too. For a moment, small bamboo valley flashed with dazzling lights. Streams of beautiful strange lights flew up towards the dark clouds in the horizon, adding some color, just as the sky full of dark clouds, in a blink, swallowed up these lights. Qingyan Hill, Big Bamboo Valley. Xavion, leading the 5 junior brothers, stood outside Observe Silence Hall, waiting for Tian Bui and Suru to appear, just as it seemed like after a long time, Tian Bui and his wife still did not come out. 6th disciple Amanla could not hold it in, softly said to Xavion, Big senior brother, teacher and teacher's wife still not out. What are they doing inside? Xavion rolled his eyes at Amanla, snappily said, How would I know? If you want to know so much, why don't you go in and see for yourself? Amanla met with a rebuff, shrunk back, grumbled, I know, you can't find a wife yourself. Don't vent your anger on me. Xavion's ears were sharp, actually heard it, could not help but became furious, slapped the back of Amanla's head, angrily said, What did you say? Amanla was shocked. He had always been timid, other than the reverence towards teacher and teacher's wife. It was this big senior brother, but Xavion was usually very easygoing, but it seemed like this time with Wunmin's twists and turns, it was not a small blow to him. He actually got angry. The few senior brothers beside him were trying hard to hold back their laughter, squinted at Amanla. Amanla's face was awkward, wanted to ask the other senior brothers for help. Unexpectedly, when he looked over, Hidaji, Wudu-e, and the rest were either looking up at the sky or overlooking the distant mountains, a leisurely scene of being in a trance, like celestial beings who did not care about worldly affairs. Du Baishu fiercely glared at these few senior brothers who did not have the spirit of loyalty, finally turned to Xavion and laughed a few times, said, Da Shi Xiang, you don't have to be anxious. After this catastrophe, I will immediately go down the mountain to find the best matchmaker to help you find a marriage. His voice had not finished. Xavion, whose face had turned purple with anger, kicked over. Putong sound sent Du Baishu flying far away. Hidaji and the rest snickered for a moment, shook their heads. Only Du Baishu's face was dejected, sat on the ground. An indistinct laughter came in from outside the hall. Tian Bui and Suru heard it. Suru's solemn face revealed a rare smile, and then sighed, softly said, Bui, the disciples are all waiting. Tian Bui, in a long robe, his face solemn, stood in front of the 3 Qing statues in Observe Silence Hall, silently nodded. Then he gazed at the 3 statues, took a step forward, picked up 3 joss sticks from the offering table, lit the candles, solemnly held the joss sticks, and bowed 3 times. After inserting the joss sticks into the incense burner, Tian Bui stood silently. Suru also bowed 3 times, her expression respectful. Just when they were preparing to turn back, Tian Bui suddenly thought of something, stopped his steps. Suru was startled, turned back and said, What is it, Bui? Tian Bui frowned, suddenly turned and strode over, went around to the back of the 3 Qing statues. Suru's expression changed, seemed to understand something, but looking at her expression, She seemed to be hesitating, but eventually still followed Tian Bui. Behind the statues was another altar table, but the scale was much smaller than the front. A yellow cloth hung down, covering half of it. Tian Bui stood in front of this small altar, watched for a while, but did not make a move to worship after a long while. He stretched his hand into this cloth, gently groped a few times. From the edge of the altar, took out a wooden tablet. On it was carved, "Senior Brother Wan Jianyi's tablet." Suru watched beside, saw Tian Bui using his sleeve to gently wipe the dust off the tablet. The dust was not thick. Evidently someone frequently cleaned it. After it was clean, Tian Bui respectfully placed the tablet on the altar, took 3 joss sticks and lit them, again bowed 3 times to the tablet. Suru's face was indifferent, quietly said, "Bui, what are you doing? Don't tell me at this juncture you still hope one's senior brother will bless Qingyun?" Tian Bui coldly said, "One's senior brother is after all from Qingyun. He is full of arrogance, but he values the sect the most. If he knows about today's matter, his spirit in heaven will definitely bless Qingyun branch." Suru was silent. After a long time, gently shook her head, sighed. Tian Bui looked at the tablet for a long time, then slowly said, "Let's go." When the two of them came out from Observe Silence Hall, Xavion and the rest of the disciples were already waiting outside. Tian Bui's eyes looked from Xavion to Amanla, nodded. In the meantime, for some reason, the corner of his eyes again glanced at the quiet disciples' houses. In his eyes, there seemed to be a trace of helplessness. Maybe it was because of the impending calamity, the impending war. Tian Bui looked to be in a bad mood, did not speak much, looking at the disciples who had been waiting for a long time. He finally only nodded, said, "Let's go." To Tong Tian Peak. Where the lights flashed, Tian Bui took the lead. Suru followed closely behind. The Big Bamboo Valley disciples hurriedly followed. The dark, cloudy horizon, several brilliant lights streaked past again and then disappeared into the clouds. Xiao Yikai, Lin Jingyu, and the rest of the Qingyun disciples were exhausted. Finally, on this day, when the sky was about to turn dark, they sent all the people in Heong City onto the ancient path heading north. At the same time, from outside Heong City, occasionally there were some scattered people who gathered and headed north. Just a short day and night's work, Xiao Yikai, Lin Jingyu, and the rest of the Qingyun disciples all looked like they had slimmed down, extremely tired, and when everyone spoke, their voices were almost hoarse. Standing at the top of Qingyun City, watching the gradually disappearing long queue of people, Xiao Yikai then felt relieved. With a bitter laugh, with a hoarse voice said to Lin Jingyu, who was standing beside him, "Finally sent off." Lin Jingyu also let out a long sigh. His tense expression temporarily relaxed, but his brows were still furrowed. Unlike Xiao Yikai, who was completely relaxed, as if there was still something in his heart that he was worried about. Xiao Yikai was an intelligent person, very quickly noticed that Lin Jingyu's brows still had a trace of solemnity. Slightly startled, asked, "Why? Lin Junior Brother, do you feel anything wrong?" Lin Jingyu was stunned for a moment, shook his head, said, "Senior Brother has misunderstood. It is not that Junior Brother feels anything wrong. It is just that towards this catastrophe, I am worried, that's all." Xiao Yikai nodded, patted his shoulder, said, "I know, actually I am also the same. But as the saying goes, evil does not overwhelm good. Heaven will not seal off one's way. You and I are both from the good faction, for the common people. In the battle in the future, you and I will do our best. Don't think too much." Lin Jingyu smiled, nodded and said, "Senior Brother is right." Xiao Yikai smiled and said, "Then I will go over there to take a look." Speaking, he left Lin Jingyu and walked to the side. Originally, he wanted to go back to Heong City to take a closer look, to make sure there were no more people left behind. If not, once the demon beast attacked, most likely they would not be spared. Unexpectedly, he had only taken a few steps when suddenly Lin Jingyu's low voice was heard from behind. "Ho! Hua! Ho!" Xiao Yikai was startled, turned around, and saw Lin Jingyu frowning tightly, his face looking puzzled, standing at the same spot and muttering something. He listened carefully and realized that it seemed to be unclear. It was something like "ho." Xiao Yikai raised his brows, said, "Lin Junior Brother, What happened to the rear mountain? Lin Jingyu was startled, raised his head and said, Rear mountain? What rear mountain? Xiao Yikai was instead taken aback by his words, said, I heard you keep talking about rear mountain. Rear mountain. I thought that these few years you often went to our Tongtian Peak Rear Mountain Founder's ancestral hall to offer sacrifices and help. I thought something happened at the rear mountain. Chapter 3:13. Lin Jingyu looked embarrassed, quickly said, No, I was talking to myself, made senior brother worried. Xiao Yikai smiled and said, It's good that you are fine, Lin junior brother, the big battle is imminent. You must recuperate. Lin Jingyu smiled and nodded, was about to speak when suddenly a Qing Yun disciple's cry was heard from afar. Xiao Yikai and Lin Jingyu were shocked, almost at the same time leapt up, flew towards the source of the cry. That sound was from Heyong City's southern gate. A few Qing Yun disciples were there doing their last patrol, but right now each of them looked like they were facing a great enemy, wielding their magical weapons, their expressions nervous. On the city wall, a ferocious beast with a lion's head and wolf's body, its huge eyes fierce and ferocious, a low growl coming from its mouth, staring at these Qing Yun disciples, but it seemed to know that these people were not ordinary people, so for the moment it did not act rashly. Xiao Yikai and Lin Jingyu landed. At this time the other Qing Yun disciples also rushed over. After they saw clearly, they all inhaled a breath of cold air. Xiao Yikai let out a long breath, quietly said, It's the demon beasts. Suddenly, a Qing Yun disciple beside Lin Jingyu loudly shouted, Outside, outside. The voice was terrified. Everyone heard it. Immediately their hearts seemed to be in their throats. Almost at the same time, looked towards the distance outside Heyong City, at the direction that Qing Yun disciple was pointing. Under the dense black clouds in the sky, the rumbling of thunder came from the horizon, and the silent lightning pierced through the blue dome of heaven. The earth was trembling slightly. Deep rumbles like from the depths of hell slowly seeped out, but straight into the depths of the people's souls, reverberated incessantly. Innumerable demon beasts gathered into a boundless, terrifying black tide, surging over from afar, rumbling like thunder, but already suppressed the thunder in the horizon, the heaven and earth austere, lightning like strange snakes scurrying. The oppressive, baleful aura, even from afar, had already hit them in the face. The Qing Yun disciples were all pale. Xiao Yikai clenched his teeth, loudly said, Go, quickly go, immediately return to Qing Yun Hill. As he shouted, the Qing Yun disciples did not dare to be slow. They all took out their celestial swords and flew into the sky. The monster with the head of a lion and the body of a wolf on the wall roared loudly. It looked fierce. Lin Jingyu followed at the back of the crowd, looked back in midair, saw the endless demon beasts surging over. The entire land seemed to be a sea of evil beasts. There was not a single trace of human presence. This catastrophe had finally arrived at the most critical moment. After hearing Xiao Yikai and the rest's urgent report, Qing Yun Hill Tongtian Peak Crystal Hall full of good faction. For a moment nobody spoke. Silence enveloped this grand hall. What should come had finally come. Reverend Daoxian slowly stood up, his face solemn, unhurriedly said, Everyone, the world's lives are all here. Now the demon beasts have occupied Heyong City and will attack Qing Yun in a few days. I have nothing more to say here. Please go back and have a good rest. In the future we will fight the demon beast to the death. The crowd looked at each other. After a moment slowly stood up, the crystal hall gradually filled with whispers, and it was in this low murmur the crowd walked out. Reverend Daoxian turned to Puhong Master and Yun Elon sitting beside him, said, Both of you please take a rest too. I have something to discuss with the other Qing Yun sect leaders. Puhong Master and Yun Elon both stood up, returned the greeting and said, Reverend, please go ahead. Reverend Daoxian returned the greeting, greeted Xiao Yikai. Xiao Yikai hurriedly followed Reverend Daoxian into the rear hall. Somewhere there, the other Qing Yun sect leaders and elders were already waiting for them. Lin Jingyu watched them leave and then walked out of the crystal hall alone, strolled to the railing outside the hall, leaned against the railing and gazed into the distance. The horizon was like ink, dark clouds heavy, not a trace of light. The mountain breeze was like knives, whistling, cutting his face painfully. He stood there silently, but in his mind, he couldn't help but think of that mysterious note and those four strange words on it. Backyard fire. Backyard fire. Backyard fire? What backyard fire? Countless thoughts turned in Lin Jingyu's mind. In the end, his thoughts slowly converged on one point. That was Xiao Yikai's startled words reverberating beside his ears. What happened to the rear mountain? Lin Jr. brother. Rear mountain? Lin Jingyu frowned again, although his eyes were bright, but he instead slowly shook his head, perplexed again. This contemplation lasted for a long time. When he regained his senses, he realized there was no one around. Lin Jingyu sighed, unhurriedly walked down the stairs. Ever since the appearance of the demon beasts, Qing Yun's sect had strengthened Qing Yun Hill security, especially at the front mountain. No one knew when those ferocious, innumerable evil beasts would suddenly charge up. But Qing Yun Hill had always been precipitous, especially Tong Tian Peak, towering into the clouds, easy to defend and hard to attack. But these two accomplished cultivators were not much of an obstacle, but to many demon beasts that could not fly it was an excellent barrier. Just that all along, wherever the demon beasts passed by, they were invincible, and there were numerous shocking and terrifying news. No one could be sure that these demon beasts would not have any unexpected attack. Moreover, that legendary beast deity till today, no one knew his background, which added to everyone's suspicions. Compared to Qing Yun Front Mountain, Qing Yun Rear Mountain was almost completely filled with precipitous cliffs, difficult for monkeys to cross. Even so, Qing Yun's sect still arranged for many disciples to ride their swords and patrol in the sky, just in case. Just that one point was very strange. Near Qing Yun's sect Forbidden Illusory Moon Cave and Founder's Ancestral Hall at the edge of the Forbidden Grounds, there were very few Qing Yun disciples guarding, as if Qing Yun's sect was not at all worried about these two places. And right now the gloomy night had just passed. The sky was just beginning to brighten. Towering high into the clouds, Tong Tian Peak, between the small path leading to Founder's Ancestral Hall and Illusory Moon Cave, there was a faint mist, gently drifting with the mountain breeze, lingering between the pine and cypress trees on both sides of the path. At this moment, even the chirping of birds could not be heard. The damp moisture condensed into crystal-clear dew beads, slowly trickling down from the emerald green leaves, quietly dripping down. And there was not a trace of a human figure. Suddenly, a human figure appeared on this small path. It was ghostly. His face was indifferent. No fear or worry could be seen in the enemy's territory. Also no nervousness of approaching the forbidden grounds. He only expressionlessly and slowly walked forward. This path, he had walked it before, 10 years ago. 10 years later, the scenery seemed to be the same. Nothing had changed. The pine and cypress were evergreen. The grass and trees flourished. Even the soil under his feet seemed to be as moist and soft as that year. Just that, the one who had changed was him. The mountain breeze passed through the forest branches, blew past his clothes, ruffled his hair. Xiao Hui, who was crouching on his shoulder, still looked drowsy. Its eyes drooped, its tail wrapped around Ghost Li's arm. And Ghost Li's eyes was strangely bright. This small path was winding, heading deep into the mountains. The mist gently dispersed in front of him and quietly closed up behind him. He walked in this confusion, always moving forward, never once looking back. Along the way, and reached that three-way junction. Slightly to the left was still a deep and serene small path, and the small path to the right behind the forest indistinctly revealed a few halls and eaves. That must be Founder's Ancestral Hall, Ghostly muttered in his heart. 10 years ago, it was right here he once fought against the evil sect together with Lin Jingyu, and it was also here that Lu Sueki confronted him. And now, he was already like a stranger to these years, these old friends. Sha-sha, sha-sha, a fine sound was heard from deep in the forest, as if someone had woken up early to clean something, gently melodious. Ghostly quietly stood there listening. He was actually in a trance, as if the years and time, in this fine sha-sha sound, quietly reverberated with ripples, quietly passing by. He suddenly, as if startled awake from a dream, abruptly turned his head. The silent atmosphere in that instant seemed to freeze. Even that faint rustling sound seemed to have stopped silent. Behind him, unknowingly, stood a black-attired person, black veil masked Mr. Ghost. Ghostly's pupils contracted slightly, and a deep voice said, "You are here too." Mr. Ghost quietly said, "Yes." Ghostly said, "What are you here for?" Mr. Ghost shook his head, said, "I am here to lend you a hand." Ghostly sneered, said, "What did you say?" Mr. Ghost indifferently said, "You don't have to be suspicious. There are some things you don't know. I specially came to inform you. There is no mechanism outside the illusory moon cave, but inside there is a superior formation. It is the spirit guarding the ancient sword Zhu Xian. Its source is no different from the Zhu Xian sword formation. If outsiders want to barge in rashly and trigger the formation, it will be the same as alerting the Zhu Xian sword formation. The consequence is only death. If you think you can defeat that ancient sword Zhu Xian, I have nothing to say." Ghost Li's pupils contracted, and in the distant mist, that faint mist also seemed to tremble slightly. Mr. Ghost glanced at Ghost Li, said, "Originally, it is extremely difficult for us evil sect people to enter this illusory moon cave, but you are an exception in the entire world other than Qing Yin sect head elders. Only you can enter." Ghostly was silent for a moment, coldly said, "What do you mean?" Mr. Ghost said, "This formation must use Qing Yun sect's Tai, Ji, Xian Qing Wei, Shang Qing state as the key. To grasp the formation mechanism, only then can you enter. And after entering, the illusions will be like rain. Whether you confirm your mind or not, it will depend on you." Ghostly looked deeply at this person's black figure. After a long silence, said, "Why are you telling me so much?" Mr. Ghost smiled. His black figure in the mist seemed to be swaying, like a ghost, faintly said, "You don't have to care so much. Anyway, this is all I have to say. Whether you believe it or not is up to you." Qing Yun Hill Tongtian Peak Front Mountain. A Qing Yun Taoist child who was swept the fallen leaf to the side, was about to take a rest when he saw a figure slowly walking up the stairs, dressed in Qing Yun attire. Although there were many Qing Yun sect disciples, but this person had traversed this place countless times for the past 10 years. They were already familiar with him. Lin's senior brother. The Taoist child with a slightly immature voice smiled and said to Lin Jingyu, who was walking up, "You are here so early. Going to the founder's ancestral hall at the back of the mountain again?" Lin Jingyu smiled, nodded and said, "Yes. Last night I did not sleep well, kept feeling vexed, like something happened, so I came up earlier." The Taoist children who were also sweeping also walked over, gathered together. One of them asked, "Lin's senior brother, I heard the demon beast have already reached Heiyang City at the foot of the mountain. Will they attack?" The other Taoist children immediately started talking at the same time, but they were after all young, not as worried as those famous figures, although they were also worried about the demon beasts, but instead were more optimistic. Influenced by them, Lin Jingyu's mood also improved a lot, smiled and said, "Oh, the demon beasts are ferocious. Most likely they will attack Qing Yun." "What?" This time it was like an uproar. The Taoist children all started to make noise. Lin Jingyu smiled and comforted them, motioned for them to quieten down, then said, "But don't we have all the seniors on Qing Yun Hill now? Their powers are strong, their skills profound, definitely not afraid of the demon beasts. Besides," Lin Jingyu's face revealed a mysterious expression, said, "We still have the invincible Zhu Xian sword formation. Don't tell me you all have forgotten?" The Daoist children were all excited and laughed, saying, "That's right. Yes, we have the Zhu Xian sword formation. We will definitely win." "That's right. Wait for the demon beast to come up. Let them all die under the founder's sword formation. Avenge the common people." Listening to these words, Lin Jingyu smiled, nodded frequently. At the end, he instructed the Taoist children a few words and then continued to walk towards the back of the mountain. Leaving these carefree youths, his expression suddenly turned solemn, quietly walked. After a long while, he suddenly sighed, shook his head, quietly muttered to himself, "Better hurry to the back of the mountain, ask the seniors." While speaking, he quickened his steps, walked toward the founder's ancestral hall at the back of Tongtian Peak. And while he was walking with his head lowered, the misty mist on the back of the mountain was also stacking, gently drifting, like a dream that had not woken up from last night. At the fork in the road, Ghost Li and Mr. Ghost stared at each other for a long time. A strange glint flashed in their eyes. Mr. Ghost did not avoid him, looked straight at him. After a long while, Ghostly did not make a sound, suddenly turned and walked towards that serene small path. Mr. Ghost behind him watched him. But at this moment, suddenly, an old voice from the small path toward the founder's ancestral hall, from that direction drifting gently in the white mist, with an indescribable weariness of vicissitudes, an old man's voice said, "Both of you, where are you going?" Ghostly and Mr. Ghost's bodies shook, turned back and looked. The mist on that small path dissipated. A hunched figure slowly walked out. His back was slightly bent, as if the years had already pressed on him till he could not breathe. Lines of knife-like wrinkles on his face, as if telling of the wasted years. Even that broom in his hand, right now, looked as old as its owner. Just that, this old man slowly walked, stopped 6 chi before Ghostly and Mr. Ghost. Facing these two figures, this weary old man, when he slowly raised his head, a pair of clear and sharp eyes stared ahead. The morning chill, the tired birds have not woken up. Both of you interested in having a cup of hot tea with me? Chapter 3:14. In the morning, the cool breeze blew gently on Qingyun Hill, causing the mist on the mountain to slowly flip, like a veil drifting in the dense forest. At the three-way junction outside the founder's ancestral hall, Ghostly, Mr. Ghost, and the elderly sweeping the floor stood in a triangle, facing each other in the subtle atmosphere. The wrinkles on the elderly's face moved. His hoarse voice slowly said, "Both of you are not from this Qingyun Hill. Why did you come to this Qingyun place privately? I wonder what is the matter?" Ghostly was silent, his eyes assessing the elderly for a moment. Mr. Ghost was standing 6 chi away from him. With their skills, they might not be afraid of anyone in the world, just that between the two of them, it was obvious that neither of them trusted the other. But at this moment, Mr. Ghost's eyes behind the black veil were staring at the elderly sweeping the floor. His eyes, bright and piercing, seemed to have another kind of strange feeling. The elderly seemed to sense something, shakily turned around, looked at Mr. Ghost, said, "This master, you keep staring at me. Don't tell me you have something to say?" Mr. Ghost suddenly laughed, said, "You're just an old man guarding Qingyun Hill Founder's ancestral hall. Why be a busybody? Right now, this young man." He pointed at Ghostly, said, "He has long heard of Qingyun Hill Illusory Moon Cave's reputation. Wants to go in and take a look. I wonder if Elder will let him in." Ghostly stood at a distance, suddenly coldly snorted, said, "Before coming up the mountain, you and I had already discussed, I will enter the Illusory Moon Cave to attract Qingyun Sec's attention. You'll take the opportunity to sneak into Qingyun Hill Founder's ancestral hall, destroy all of Qingyun Sec's ancestors' memorial tablets. Give Qingyun Sect a good lesson. Why are you here? Still not going in?" Mr. Ghost paused, looked at Ghostly. Ghostly's face was solemn, his expression solemn and serious. It was hard to believe that there was no such thing. Mr. Ghost looked at him for a long time, seemed to laugh bitterly, shook his head slightly. That elderly looked at Ghostly and again at Mr. Ghost. His face gradually turned cold. The sharp glint in his eyes gradually brightened, faintly said, "Seems like no matter what, both of you have ill intentions towards Qingyun. Just that Qingyun is an important place. This old man has guarded it for many years. If the two of you want to wreak havoc here, you'll have to step over this old man's body first." He said this indifferently, facing the two mysterious and unfamiliar people in front of him. He slowly straightened his body. Early in the morning, in the dense forest of the back mountain, the distant and crisp chirping of birds suddenly seemed to stop and disappear. Only the mist that filled the mountain was still drifting and lingering around them. Dozens of years of life seemed to quietly flow by in this silence, turning into fine lines at the corner of one's eyes. Mr. Ghost suddenly said, "How is her left hand?" Ghostly and the old man were stunned at the same time. Ghostly naturally did not understand why Mr. Ghost would suddenly say such inexplicable words, but the old man's body was clearly shaking, his eyes staring at Mr. Ghost, unable to move away. In the early morning, in the thin mist, the old man stared for a long time. Suddenly, he let out a long sigh. The astonished expression on his face gradually disappeared. He slowly said, "It's you." Mr. Ghost smiled and said, "It's me." He paused for a moment, his eyes assessing the old man's face. Even his voice suddenly carried some emotions, said, "These few years, why have you aged so much? Look at you like this. Who can still recognize your Qingyun sect one Jian, whose name shook the world?" When the old man heard the three words, 10,000 swords won, his body suddenly trembled, as if these three words were three sharp blades, each blade stabbing into his heart. Even his face, which had been deeply scarred by the passage of time, unexpectedly showed an excited expression that had not been seen for a long time. Wang Jian, Wang Jian, he softly muttered this name, the expression on his face complicated and carrying pain. Ghostly frowned. Wang Jian, this name. He had heard of it many years ago when he was still a Qing Yun sect disciple, just that he absolutely did not expect that this legendary figure who had passed away for many years was still alive in this world, and even more did not expect that person who caused the current Qing Yun sect elders to fight incessantly, Tao Song Song even betrayed Qing Yun because of it, had actually become such an unremarkable old man. The cold wind blew past, brushing past their clothes, in this misty dreamlike place. The past also seemed to reverberate here. Until that once Wang Jian, who once looked down on the world but now had a face full of wrinkles, slowly raised his head. Pooh! A light sound was emitted from his hand. Ghost Li and Mr. Ghost looked over at the same time. Fine dust rustled down. That broken broom in Wang Jianyi's hand, in his agitated state, was crushed into pieces by a great force, scattered on the ground. The mountain breeze blew away the dust bit by bit. Wang Jian, he stared at the thing that was still in his hand a moment ago. Right now it had disappeared without a trace. Then, he looked up at Mr. Ghost, word by word said, "If not for you, I would already be a cripple. You have done me a favor. I have always remembered it in my heart." Mr. Ghost faintly said, "You and I felt like old friends at the first meeting, in the northwest wilderness, and that Puji monk." Ghostly, who had been standing quietly at the side, suddenly shook, his eyes glinting brightly. Mr. Ghost and that Wang Jian did not notice the change in Ghostly's expression, continued, "Although the three of us are from different families, but after all we have been acquainted. Now that Puji has passed away for many years, there is also no news of you. Unexpectedly we can still meet today. It is not in vain for me to come to this Qing Yin Hill." His words were filled with emotions, unable to contain his sorrow. Wang Jianyi's tensed expression, right now also gradually relaxed, sighed and said, "That's right, I also did not expect to actually be able to meet an old friend again." Stop. Halfway through his words, his voice suddenly turned hurried. With a shout, Ghostly quietly turned around, unwilling to listen to the two of them talking about the past, was about to walk towards the illusory moon cave. Wang Jian, he coldly snorted, without seeing how his body swayed. He raised his hand, his shriveled palm suddenly seemed to grow 1,000 times, grabbed down from his back like a giant claw. Ghostly's footsteps paused. Without turning back, his wrist shook, flashed above his head, drew a circular pattern in the air. The next moment the light shone brightly. It was the Taiji diagram, green light dazzling. Wang Jianyi's giant claw was held up by the green light, instantly rebounded back, but just in that moment, Wang Jianyi's shriveled body had already blocked in front of Ghostly. Just as a shocked expression once again surfaced on his face, said, "Taiji Xianqing Wei? Who exactly are you?" Mr. Ghost's voice was heard faintly from behind, said, "He is the current evil sect Ghost King sect's important figure." Ghostly frowned, but still did not speak. Wang Jianyi assessed him with a few glances, nodded his head and said, "So you are that Zhang Xiao fan who was chased out by Qing Yun sect 10 years ago and defected to the evil sect?" Ghostly's face was as cold as frost, coldly said, "Move aside." Wang Jian, he did not have the slightest intention to move aside, but after assessing Ghostly for a moment, he suddenly sighed and said, "Tian Jr. brother is actually able to produce a disciple like you. It is really amazing." Ghostly's countenance changed, but then he snorted. An arrogant expression appeared on his face, as if he regarded this famous Wang Jian as nothing, directly lifted his feet and walked over. Wang Jian, he straightened his body, clasped his hands behind his back, but did not have any intention to retreat. The two of them were getting closer and closer. Wang Jian, he suddenly frowned. His body pulled up from the ground. Almost at the same time, the ground beneath his feet, a muffled sound, instantly cracked open. The soul-absorbing stick glimmering with cold dark green light shot out from the ground beneath his feet, pursuing straight ahead. Wang Jian, in the air, his body swayed. Suddenly, with a loud shout, shook left and right. he actually grabbed towards the soul-absorbing stick with his bare hands. The sinister orb at the tip of the soul-absorbing stick glowed brightly with red light. Strands and strands of dark red blood all lit up, mixed in the black light. Without hesitation, charged straight ahead. The black gas rolled. The red light flashed dimly. In that instant, the surroundings seemed to darken, but Wan Jian charged down. All of the cold and harsh air seemed to have no effect on him. Ghostly's countenance changed. This level of skill, it could be said that it was the first time he saw it. Wan Jian, he looked like he was about to grab this ferocious object in his hands, but at this moment, suddenly in the black gas and red light, on the surface of the sinister orb at the tip of the soul-absorbing stick, a strange pattern emerged from the depths of the orb, from small to big, from dark to bright. In an instant it stood out from the black gas and mysterious light, golden light resplendent. It was a Buddhist incantation. Swastika word, a thick and pure power, mixed with a trace of strangeness, forcefully rebounded Wan Jian's palm back. Wan Jian ghostly retreated at the same time. The soul-absorbing stick also flew back into Ghostly's hands. Wan Jian stopped in the air, his face slightly pale, staring at Ghostly. Word by word said, "Great Brahmin wisdom." Ghostly's face was expressionless, but his heart was shaken. This person's skills were so high. It was really unfathomable. In these 10 over years, this was the first time he saw someone who could withstand the soul-absorbing evil power barehanded. His heart was shaken, but he did not know that Wan Jian, he was also quite shocked. Wan Jian himself was an exceptional and talented person. His skills far surpassed those in the same sect, other than a Reverend Daoxian, who could be compared to him. He did not even put the others in his eyes. Although he met with misfortune after misfortune, his fate was bumpy, but today, facing this junior, the innate arrogance in his heart was still the same. Just that this exchange with Ghostly made him quite shocked. The sinister orb's evil power was strange and ferocious. Although he looked fine on the outside, but it had already affected the agitation of his blood. And after that, Ghostly displayed the Buddhism true way, great Brahmin wisdom, merged into one with the Taoist and evil sect true way. There was no gap at all. Even with his level of cultivation, he could not do anything and was forced back. He couldn't help but be shocked. Chapter 3:15. A cold gust of wind blew across the field, and the thin mist drifted gently, showing signs of dissipating. Wan Jian looked at Ghostly for a long time, nodded his head and said, "As expected, there will be talented people in every generation. Didn't expect that in my remaining years, I can still meet someone like you. Heaven has not let me down." Ghostly frowned, did not quite understand the meaning of Wan Jian's words. Mr. Ghost, who was standing behind, quietly sighed, seemed to be lamenting his old friend. After so many years, that untamed spirit in his heart still did not change. But just when he was sighing, a strange glint flashed in his eyes, stared intently at Wan Jian. Ghostly coldly said, "Move aside." Wan Jian looked at him. That young man was cold and arrogant in front of him. That expression suddenly seemed so familiar. He suddenly laughed out. His expression had a trace of bitterness, but then it was taken over by heroism. Laughed and said, "Good, good, good," as expected a young man. The worldly people should not be taken seriously. Just that if you want to go over, then use your own real abilities. Ghostly gave a long whistle, without saying anything, leapt up. Wan Jian's pupils contracted, suddenly retreated. His body flew to the edge of the dense forest. His right hand grabbed a pine tree the size of a person's arm. With a loud shout, in that instant the surroundings shook in the rumbling sounds. The huge pine tree was actually uprooted by him, like a giant arm in the air. Wan Jian right now was holding the huge tree, standing proudly in the air, whereas the wretched and hunched look from before. He was in high spirits, his face agitated, his eyes and brows wide open, exactly the insufferably arrogant look in the past. "Come," Wan Jian shouted, like thunder. "You have the sinister orb. How about you take a look at my Qing Yin giant tree?" His body swayed. In that instant, the huge tree danced. Sounds of woo-woo. In a blink extremely swift, the sky was filled with tree shadows, covering the sky and covering the earth as it charged over. The sound of the wind was strong and urgent. No other sounds could be heard. Ghostly's countenance changed greatly, turning and turning in the shadows of the trees. That enormous tree storm like surging huge waves, also like an endless tide, one wave higher than the other, chasing under the blue sky. The mountain mist also seemed to tremble. The wind blew past the treetops, turned into a violent gale, turned into a whirlpool in midair, swallowing everything in the world. Ghostly was in the center of that whirlpool. All around him were the shadows of the trees, the strong wind brushing against his face like knives, as if he was not careful, he would be cut into pieces by this sharp object. Wanjini laughed maniacally, as if he had returned to the time when he was unhindered throughout the world. The excitement on his face was even more intense. All of his attention focused on Ghostly. Ghostly in the storm suddenly clenched his teeth, watching the tree shadows pressing over like a mountain. This time he did not dodge, his right hand raised. The soul-absorbing stick flickering with faint red light flew out. In the thousands of tree shadows, with a sound accurately nailed onto the tree trunk. The next moment the evil power danced wildly. Streams of red light rose from the sinister orb, twining around the tree trunk. Where it passed, the trunk split, debris flying. In a short while, the huge tree trunk was already swallowed by this evil power by 1/3. But Wanjini's expression was not shocked. Instead, he laughed, with a long laugh. His left hand slashed across the air. The tree trunk was swept by that invisible strong wind. Immediately, like tofu, was cut. The tree trunk, which was shrouded by the red light, in a blink made a groan, turned into powder, scattered in the wind. But Wanjini, who was in front, lifted up the remaining tree trunk, like supporting the sky, mighty and insufferably arrogant. The sky full of tree shadows disappeared in a blink. The storm stopped. The strong wind stopped. Everything in the world stopped breathing, staring at that figure flying in the air. He descended from the sky, with a loud shout, raised the wood, and struck down. The strong wind whistled, piercing over, within a radius of 3 zhongs, a sound. In an instant all the sand and stones flew out, only Ghostly alone, his clothes fluttering, his face pale, staring unwaveringly at the huge tree descending from the sky. That strange whistle like thunder arrived in an instant. Ghostly clenched his teeth. Suddenly both his hands danced. The Taiji diagram spun unceasingly, abruptly rose up above his head, blocking in front of the thunder-like tree trunk. 2 powerful forces collided in the air. Even the earth and mountain peaks around them seemed to shake. Where Ghostly was standing, his feet had already sunk into the soil. The front of the tree trunk was forced by the force of Taiji Xianqing Wei, cracked, wood shavings flew everywhere. In a blink it turned into powder, dispersing without a trace. But the tree trunk abruptly forced downwards, bit by bit pierced down from the Taiji diagram. Ghostly's face turned even paler, the soul-devouring evil light even stronger. The Buddhist incantation appeared again, just below the Taiji diagram. Golden light flashed. Another layer was laid down. The strong wind whistled, almost making it hard for one to breathe. The violent wind wreaked havoc. Those 2 men were fighting in the dense forest. Nobody could see their faces, only that black figure indistinctly flashed. Wanjini's expression was impassioned. Even the deep wrinkles had disappeared, as if the many years of his youth, at this moment, had returned to him. That time when he was extremely excited, laughing proudly at the world. He howled to the sky, like a dragon howling, that feeling of the strong wind blowing against his face, like his entire body's blood was burning. He laughed loudly and charged down. His entire body skills burst out from that tree trunk. All of his cultivation, like a flame, exploded out. The Buddhist incantation instantly dispersed. Layers of heavy pressure like toppling mountains and overturning seas pressed down. Blood trickled out from the corner of Ghostly's mouth. His pale face suddenly turned red. Suddenly a mouthful of blood spurted out, splashed onto the soul-devouring stick. Drops of blood quietly melted into it. The icy cold energy reverberated out from the depths of his heart. Both of his eyes suddenly turned blood-red. At this moment of imminent peril, suddenly, the howling strong wind stopped. The murderous intent that frightened the gods and worried the ghosts disappeared. That mighty figure in the air like a deity suddenly started to sway, gradually losing strength. A black figure swiftly swept past from behind Wanjini, and Ghostly's true way, which had been accumulating for a long time, instantly lost its suppression, immediately burst out, green and golden lights, dark red evil power, The three great true ways merged into one great force instantly went against the sky, solidly struck onto Wan Jinny's chest. In that instant, the sounds of bones breaking like falling pearls, unceasingly. Wan Jinny paused in the air, did not fly out, just that his body suddenly slumped down, starting from his chest. His entire body's muscles seemed to have lost their support, started to wither irretrievably. Ghostly was stunned. The next moment, he involuntarily hugged Wan Jinny's body. That aged body once again told him this was such an aged old man. And when he turned, he clearly saw a black palm print was clearly imprinted on Wan Jinny's back. Ghostly hugged Wan Jinny and landed on the ground. He and Wan Jinny, who was panting, turned to look at the same time. That black figure standing in the mist that had yet to disperse was Mr. Ghost. Ghostly's eyes glinted like evil fire, burning fiercely, coldly said, "What are you doing?" Mr. Ghost ignored him, looked at Wan Jinny. That dying old man was also staring at him, just that the expression in his eyes was much more complicated. The black veil on Mr. Ghost's face gently fluttered, not knowing if he was also feeling agitated, just that his voice was still that calm. "After so many years, are you still like this? Always so trusting of your friends, not at all guarded against them?" Wan Jinny opened his mouth, seemed to want to say something, but when he opened his mouth, a mouthful of blood spurted out. His face was rapidly turning pale, as if his life was also quietly leaving him. Then he instead smiled lightly, in the blood and bitterness, smiled faintly, turned his head, looked at Ghostly. That gaze, for some reason, had some gentleness. Ghostly breathed deeply. Suddenly his eyes felt hot. This old man who was still fighting with his life and death a moment ago, right now made him not dare to look straight at him. He quietly put down the old man, stood up, quietly said, "If you have the Dragon Slayer sword in your hand, I will definitely not be your match." Wan Jinny looked at this young man, his hands tightly clenched. His body also seemed to be trembling slightly. Then, Ghostly turned, stared at Mr. Ghost. Mr. Ghost did not avoid his gaze. Even the disdain and disgust in Ghostly's eyes, he did not seem to care. Ghostly quietly stared at him for a while, and then did not speak again, turned and walked toward the mountain path to the illusory moon cave. Very quickly his figure disappeared. In the field, there were only two people left. Mr. Ghost slowly walked to Wan Jinny's side. The powerless old man lying on the ground slowly raised his eyes, looked at him. Blood was still gushing out from the corner of his mouth. At this moment, suddenly, footsteps were heard from a distance. Someone was walking up from the foot of the mountain, traversing through the thin mist, looking like he was about to reach here. Mr. Ghost's countenance changed, his dark figure wavered, and instantly disappeared into the mist. The next moment, Lin Jinyu's figure flashed out from the mist, came to the field, and saw everything clearly. The faint smile instantly froze. Disbelief occupied his eyes. That old man who had been with him for the past 10 years was covered in blood, weakly lying on the ground. Lin Jinyu dashed over, carrying a trace of despair, and completely did not notice, behind him, a dark figure flashed past. Chapter 3:16. Senior, what happened to you? What has happened? Lin Jingyu rushed to Wan Jinny's side, knelt down, his hands trembling, wanting to help him up, but where his hands touched, there was only softness. A wave of disgust rose from his heart. Lin Jingyu felt like he was in a bottomless ice cellar. Where his hands touched, this old man did not have a single intact bone. Who is it? Lin Jingyu's voice instantly became hoarse, his teeth biting deeply on his lips. In a blink, blood flowed out. Even his eyes were bursting with rage and despair. Senior, he quietly cried out, choked with sobs, finally cried out. He never knew. He could still cry. Right before this desolate and powerless old man, the despair from more than 10 years ago once again enveloped him. Wan Jinny powerlessly looked at this young man. He was so sorrowful and hopeless. As such, it was impossible for him to pretend, maybe there was still someone who was sincere to me, Wan Jinny thought. His fingers moved, and then, as if he was being pitied by the deities, he tremblingly raised his hand. Lin Jingyu's body shook greatly, grabbed his hand, anxiously said, Senior, do you have anything to say who caused you to be like this? I will definitely avenge you. Who is it? Wan Jinny's face turned paler and paler. Even his breathing slowly slowed down, but for some reason, his eyes became brighter. The hand that was holding Lin Jingyu's hand gently shook. Lin Jingyu was stunned, looked down in his palm, that old and powerless finger, stained with blood, lightly and sloppily drawing. Careful. Heart. Suddenly, behind Lin Jingyu, in that thin mist, a black figure flashed out. Mr. Ghost's eyes were bright, staring at this side. Lin Jingyu right now had his back facing Mr. Ghost and was concentrating on Wan Jinny's finger, did not feel it at all. But Wan Jinny saw it. His eyes and Mr. Ghost silently met in the air, like 100 years flashed past. That vicissitudes of the past, Wan Jinny suddenly smiled, carrying a bloody smile, facing Mr. Ghost. Then he shook his head. Lin Jingyu waited for a long time, but Wan Jinny did not continue writing. He raised his head in shock, only to see Wan Jinny's head bent to the side. He was already dead. Bei's body shook, his hands trembled. He looked at the lifeless face in disbelief. After a long while, he shouted, "Senior!" He cried out in pain as he threw himself onto the old man's body. Mr. Ghost quietly stood behind him, watched Wan Jinny's aged face. After a long time, quietly retreated, disappeared into the mist. In the distant wind, a faint sigh was heard. The howls of the wolves were carried by the wind from the foot of the mountain. Sharp and fierce howls continuously rang out from afar. Qingyan Hill. Heads were moving. The good faction people gathered at Tongtian Peak. Standing at the front, Reverend Daoxian, Puhong Master, as well as Yun Elon and the rest. Their faces were solemn, brows tightly frowning, gazing down Qingyan Hill. A faint fishy smell could be faintly detected in the wind, making one involuntarily think of the countless cruel and ferocious demon beasts at the foot of the mountain. Nobody knew, after this catastrophe, what would be the outcome. In the public square outside the Crystal Hall, heads were moving, but it was a stretch of silence. Everyone's faces were solemn. And at this moment of silence, suddenly, a long howl surged up to the sky from afar, like a wolf's howl, like a ghost cry, sharp piercing the air, pressing over from afar. The place where the sound came from, it seemed to still be at the foot of the mountain, but the sharp howl reached the clouds. For a moment, everyone's countenance changed. This sharp howl reverberated in spirals, circled a few times between the white clouds and precipitous peaks, then slowly subsided. But at the moment when it stopped, suddenly at the foot of the mountain, thousands of beasts roared at the same time. Those innumerable howls surged up to the sky, gathered together, like toppling the mountains and overturning the seas, directly changing the color of heaven and earth, rumbling over. The clouds dispersed with a loud bang. The mountain peak stopped abruptly. A ball of black gas rose from the foot of the mountain, becoming bigger and bigger, denser and denser, condensed in the sky opposite Tongtian Peak, until it blocked the sunlight. The black clouds gradually drifted over this fairyland-like place. No one knew who was the first to shout, but everyone on the mountain peak looked over. In the depths of the dark clouds, in the midst of the howling wind, there was a young man dressed in conspicuous silk clothes, standing with his hands behind his back. He was expressionless as he looked at the people on the mountain with indifference. In the eyes of heaven and earth, what kind of thing were humans? He gently waved his hand, but his eyes seemed to pass through this mountain range. At the foot of the mountain, thousands of beasts roared, a foul wind blew, tragic cries finally came. As if he sensed something, Ghostly paused, frowned slightly and turned around, gazed towards the front of Tongtian Peak. The sky there was heavy with black clouds, the gale howling, although it was not a very far distance, but as compared to the rear mountain he was at, the weather was totally different. The warm sunlight, spilled down from the horizon, landed on his clothes. Ghostly slowly looked away, subconsciously looked at his shoulder, but he did not see Xiao Hui. This time, entering the illusory moon cave, he purposely did not bring Xiao Hui along. The danger was self-evident, and he also did not have the confidence. In the battle with that mysterious old man, although Mr. Ghost lent a helping hand, but Ghostly had an indescribable feeling towards that old man. Qingyan Sec's thousands of years of history. It was indeed a place with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Not so long ago, wasn't he also a part of this place? He indifferently pursed his lips tightly, once again lifted his feet and walked forward. Both sides of the small path were the same as before. Everywhere was a dense forest, evergreen pines and cypresses. The vegetation was dense, Only this small mountain path zigzagged ahead, leading to an unknown mystery. Deep in the forest, indistinctly clear bird cries were heard, as if the catastrophe at the front of the mountain did not have the slightest effect on this place separated by a mountain. Everywhere was peaceful, even in the air, a clear and cold taste. Ghostly's heart originally had that trace of nervousness, but in such a tranquil environment, he very quickly calmed down. So much so that when he raised his head and saw the word Illusory Moon Cave for the first time, facing the world-famous boundary, there was not a trace of strange expression on his face, as if he was looking at an ordinary cave. And in reality, in front of him, it seemed to be just an ordinary cave. The cave entrance was half the height of a normal person, about 7 chi wide, appeared on a gentle slope. Beside it were green vines and brambles. There were even a few branches hanging down from the cave entrance. The mountain breeze blew, the vines also gently swayed. And under those green vines, on the stone above the cave entrance, 4 words were carved, Illusory Moon Cave. Other than the meaning of these 4 words, everything around, including these words, seemed so ordinary. Could it be that this place was the foundation of Qingyun's sect for 2,000 years? That nameless ancient scroll, which had created countless heroes, including Qingyun Zi and Qingyi founder, was it lying here quietly? There was also that ancient sword whose name shook the world. Ghostly quietly looked at those 4 words. The weathered and weathered words seemed to be silently staring at him. He did not speak, did not sigh. The next moment he stepped in, like 1 foot stepping into the past. It was not as deep and long as he imagined. What appeared before him was a simple and unadorned stone chamber. With one glance he could see all the decorations and scenery in the cave. A few stones were piled up in the corner of the wall, and moss could be vaguely seen in the slightly damp corner of the wall. The only difference between this place and the outside of the cave was that this place was especially quiet. After entering the cave, everything seemed to have quieted down, as if it was isolated from the outside world. Looking away from the surroundings, Ghostly's gaze finally landed on the stone wall facing the cave entrance. In the flat stone wall, a stone slab of Taiji diagram was embedded. This was the only thing in this cave that could be related to Qingyun's sect. Ghostly inhaled deeply, walked up, and stopped before the Taiji diagram. The Taiji diagram was clearly marked. Many parts showed signs of damage. Clearly, it was an ancient object. Ghostly silently looked at this object. In his mind slowly echoed Mr. Ghost's words not long ago. Chapter 317. The next moment, he gently placed his hand on the Taiji diagram. Faint green light emitted from his palm. Ghostly expressionlessly looked at the light in his hand, felt the familiar Taiji Xianqing Wei energy flowing through his meridians that once belonged to this mountain. As if a person who had been sleeping for a long time had finally woken up, the tranquility of the stone chamber was suddenly broken by a faint sound. It was as if the entire cave dwelling had sighed softly, and something began to turn. Then, the Tai Chi diagram also lit up with a cyan light, and at the same time, the Tai Chi diagram began to turn. After turning a full circle from left to right, there was a sudden click sound from the stone wall, and everything stopped. Ghostly retracted his arm, quietly waited. The moment of silence disappeared in the blink of an eye, and a dull and rumbling sound came from the cave. To the right of the Taiji pattern, a circular crack suddenly appeared on the stone wall that was originally complete. Then, it slowly rotated to the side, revealing a secret cave entrance. However, there was a strange, grayish-white, misty object hovering at the entrance of the cave. It looked like mist, but also like water ripples. It was constantly spinning, and the inside of it was hazy and indistinct, making it hard to see clearly. Ghostly looked at that mist. Mr. Ghost, in the end, did not lie to him. But in this mysterious mist, who knew what it was? He didn't hesitate. He didn't even seem to think much about it as he strode in. The mist swallowed him. That figure quickly disappeared, and the 2 stone walls this time quietly turned back, gently closed. Not a trace was left. In a trance, in the haze, deep in the firmament, a lightning flashed past, abruptly pierced the darkness of the long night, turned into an enormous light sword and descended from the sky, so dazzling, making one unable to look straight at it, pierced deep into one's heart. Then, in the dark firmament, a strange moon glimmering with strange silver light rose, hanging high in the distant horizon. In that instant, his mind was completely blank. He had forgotten everything except for his gaze, which was still fixated on the back of that streak of white light. Like a deep voice with hidden bitterness, someone was softly crying, but then a familiar voice laughed. A young voice with a sound finally started to cry. For some reason, he held his breath. He was inexplicably nervous, but his heart was beating so fast. It was as though there was wind beside his ears, but he couldn't feel his own existence. It was as though there was only a pair of eyes looking around, and finally he saw. It was a small village with a dilapidated temple behind it. "Have you given birth?" A man's voice asked anxiously. "She gave birth. Mother and child are safe and sound. It is a boy." The midwife's voice was full of laughter, and she said loudly, "Congratulations." He. The honest man laughed in a simple and honest manner. There was some comfort and happiness in his simple emotions. The next moment, he saw the crying boy, the child nestled in the arms of his parents. "What name should I give it?" His father. His mother was a little weak, but she still had a happy smile on her face. Her father thought for a moment and said, "We don't recognize any characters. I think the most knowledgeable person in the village is Mr. Lin, who teaches at the east end of the village. Didn't he name all the children in the village? Why don't we ask him to name them?" Her mother nodded, and her father went out. Not long after, he walked in from outside with a smile on his face and a note in his hand. He said, "Mr. Lin said that for people like us, the most important thing is to be safe and to live a good life. That's why he gave us 3 characters and wrote it here." Her mother said happily, "Oh, knowledgeable people are really different. What name did he give our son?" The father brought the note to the side of the mother with his rough hands. He wrapped his arms around the mother and the child who was sleeping soundly. He lowered his voice, as if he had great respect and love for these 3 words, and quietly said, "Zhang, Xiao, Fan, kaboom." There was a sudden clap of thunder in the sky, and rain fell from the sky. His whole body suddenly trembled, and he panted heavily. It was raining outside the house, and the sky was as dark as ink. The distant Mount Qing Yun looked ferocious. In the bitter rain, his father and mother hugged each other. Their peaceful faces were full of smiles, and they looked at the child in their arms. He wanted to shout, but he could not make a sound. Thousands of words echoed in his mind, but in the end, they only turned into 2 words, "Dad, Mom." The raindrops that filled the sky seemed to fall on his face, chilling him to the bone. The moon in the sky was shining with a faint light. Bang! A stone flew from the sky, like it went through his body and landed behind him. The sky became clear. A group of children were running in the village, laughing and playing loudly. The normal-looking boy was running with all his might. A boy a little older than him was chasing with a group of children, shouting, "Shaw Danon, stop if you have guts." The child in front spat, said as he ran, "You think I am an idiot?" Instead, he ran even faster. The children ran all the way to the old temple at the east of the village. From the outside, the small temple was very old. It must have been through a lot of storms. Shaw Danon was the first to rush in. The group of children behind him also ran in. In the old temple, there seemed to be children's voices coming out. He stared blankly, his mind suddenly blank, as if there was an indescribable fear coming from the depths of his heart where it had long been buried, spreading out bit by bit, filling his entire heart. Step by step, he quietly approached the thatched temple, approaching the nightmare that seemed to have disappeared a long time ago. The older boy with a delicate appearance was riding on Shaw Danon's body. His face was proud, smiled. "I caught you. Now you have nothing to say?" Shaw Danon rolled his eyes, said, "Not counted, not counted. You plotted against me. How can it count?" The boy was surprised, asked, "When did I plot against you?" Shaw Danon said, "Bei, you dare to say that you did not put this door here?" The boy called Bei loudly said, "No such thing." Shaw Danon pursed his lips, tilted his head, determined not to surrender, not to give in. Bei's anger rose. One hand strangled his neck, said angrily, "You said if you catch me, you will admit defeat. Do you accept it?" Shaw Danon ignored him. Bei's face was red. His hand tightened, said loudly, "Do you accept it?" Shaw Danon's throat was strangled. Breathing became difficult. His face began to redden. But at such a young age, his temper was very strong. He did not say a word. Baby became more and more angry. The strength of his hand increased. His mouth repeatedly said, "Do you accept it? Do you accept it? Do you accept it? Do you accept it? Do you accept it?" This voice suddenly echoed in his mind like a mountain and sea. The sadness of many years and the repeated cries rose up in his heart. Then, as if he had been looking forward to it, but also as if he was not prepared for it at all, the hand that had quietly stretched out from the passage of time, withered and full of wrinkles, was so familiar, so intimate, and yet so soul-stirring, filled with boundless hatred. The old monk, smiling, still the kind smile, stood in front of him. In an instant, his world was completely blank. Everything else, the village, the children, the dispute, suddenly disappeared. There was only that compassionate and peaceful old monk looking at him with a smile. It was like a picture that had never faded in the years of time. His whole body trembled. An indescribable grief and anger rose up in his heart. He could not help but scream to the sky. The sky! When did it become dark? There was wind and rain quietly falling. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.